Delighted to have you here, and we'll pass it over to tonight's co-chair from the Public Access Working Group, the PAWG, Rachel. Rachel, would you like to kick us off, please?
This is a meeting of the Hawthorns Area Public Access Working Group. This meeting is now called to order. It is 6 p.m. and I'll start by turning it over to the Midpen team for roll call, opening remarks, and agenda overview. Roll call.
Rachel, would you lead the roll call for all of the PAWG members here? Welcome, Sandy. Doesn't look good.
So just read off the names.
Please do a roll call of who's present.
Okay, so Andrew, Sandy, just coming through the, just say present if you're here, Sandy. And then it is Vivian. And then we have Karen, Bryna. Present. And then, oh, we have that last. Yeah, that's perfect if I don't have to go in. Apologies. Where is it? David? Present. Rachel, present. Present. Willie?
Present.
Carrie? Present. Charlie? Tyler?
Present.
And look at that, Scott. That's the members of the PAWG. And then we also have here, we have Margaret from the board. And it is now Judith, correct? And Judith is the vice mayor now for Portola Valley.
Perfect. Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, everyone. This is the 5th Public Access Working Group meeting for the Hawthorns Area Plan. And my name is Ashley Mack, Planner 3. I am working here with Tina Hug, Senior Planner. We're co-managing this project. And as a reminder for those who are joining for the first time, welcome. The purpose of this working group meeting is to establish an interactive forum of local and regional perspective to collaborate with Midpen on a plan to introduce ecologically sensitive public access to the Hawthorns area that consists with the board adopted vision and goals. As a reminder, tonight's meeting is Zoom hybrid and recorded. As Rachel mentioned, we have all our public access working group members here. Rachel is our facilitator tonight. We also have our co-chair Helen here. I want to mention Judith Haskell, which is Portola Valley's vice mayor, because Sarah Warnikoff is not available tonight. Lastly, I want to introduce our project team. So our designer, Paul Stevenson from CSW, transportation consultant, Andrew Lee from Parametrics, and Kathy Garrett from PGA Design. Also working behind the scenes, we have Marie Lanka and Sherlyn Reinhardt monitoring Zoom and public comments. Lastly, we have representatives from Midpen here tonight. You will hear shortly from our Assistant General Manager, Brian Malone, and Brian Apple, our Capital Projects Field Manager. With that, I will turn it back to Kathy, our facilitator, to start.
Thanks, Ashley. It's very nice to see everyone again. I guess Happy New Year is in order. We met last in December, which is a little while ago. So welcome, and also just like to say that welcome to the public as well. Your interest is very important to this process. So your public engagement as well, of course, in the public access at the Hawthorns property. It's both appreciated and informs us all tonight as we make some progress. So this is the second time that we will have discussed the design alternatives in this meeting. And the last one was on December 16th. There were several opportunities to provide comments in the past, and there are more ahead of us going forward. So I would like to start tonight by reviewing the agenda for tonight's efforts. We have a lot of material to cover, and it's very orderly, so I'm hoping that we proceed in an orderly fashion. So here's the overview of the agenda. We have 2 public comment periods, one in just a moment and one near the end of tonight. After the review and approval of the December 16th meeting, we'll hear presentations about the updated design alternatives, and then a second public comment period that I just mentioned, after which the PORG will discuss and develop recommendations, and finally a review of schedule and the meeting close. So you can find all the materials in your packet that we shared earlier this week, and I'm hoping you've had a chance to review it all because it is quite a lot of material. But it's going to be a very good conversation, I think. We have a short break this evening after item number 3. It'll be in the order of 10 minutes, and before item number 4, so just so you know that's coming up. And so on with that, public access working group business. Before we get to this first public comment period, I'd like to just note that this is one of 2, as I said, and if you have a comment that you think we'll keep till later, what we've often found is that the presentations during the course of the evening answer your questions. So if you think that it would make sense to hold it, we encourage you and invite you to do that. But if you'd rather speak early, of course, that's an opportunity as well. And so we have people here, of course, live in person, but we also have people on the Zoom. And if you would like to make a comment and you're on the Zoom, you need to make yourself known by raising your hand. No? By public comments. Thank you. So, Rachel, I'm going to hand it to you to lead the public comment period.
All right. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment specifically on items discussed during the last working group meeting or on upcoming items for this meeting?
We have 7 public comments. We have 3 virtual this time and 4 in person.
Right. I see that there are 7 comments, and we have only 10 minutes in this first public comment, and we want to make sure that we hear from everyone wishing to speak during this time. So we are going to reduce everybody's time. Let's go ahead and do 2 minutes so that we don't. And for those who wish to speak there, please make sure you take notes, and you can always speak in the second public comment. All right, so who do we have first? Or part?
Rachel, with your blessing, should we start with those in person?
Sounds great. Thank
Marie,
you.
would you like to read out some names?
Hold on just one moment, please. Let me go ahead and pull up that slide. And Christy Corley, if you give us just a moment, we'll go ahead and unmute you. One moment. Okay, it looks like perhaps Christy is not here at this time, so we can circle back. Next, we have Ellen.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great. Okay, I am calling in to strongly advise that you put the entrance, if the 2 options are up by Roberts and down by Nathorst, that you put it up by Roberts. Nathorst is a skinny street that feeds 20 homes. And if there were any overflow parking coming from a parking lot down by Nathorst, it would easily block any emergency vehicles getting to these 20 homes. This street is the only ingress and egress for this area. Also, the cars coming down Alpine and the bicyclists, if the entrance is up by Roberts, it's by a stop sign, it's on a flatter area, and the cars and the bikes are not going half as fast as they are when they come by Nathorst, which is down a much stronger slope. It would be very dangerous, people trying to come in and out of an entrance down here, much less the bicyclists that really don't stop for much of anything. So I really am asking that you do not consider putting the entrance down by Nathorst. We've also sent in a petition, if you've read it, from our neighbors, requesting that you definitely don't put the entrance down by Nathorst, because it would severely impair any emergency vehicles getting down our street. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jerry Whitnauer. Should be in the audience. And for those who are at home, we're not taking raised hands. If you go to the public comments website for the POG, you can enter a comment there and we'll get it here and we'll be able to call you up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry Whitnauer here. I'm an equestrian, and I just wanted to say kudos to the working group. I love the trail planning that's beginning to emerge from the hard work that you're all doing. I'm here today to comment on both options 1 and 2. I like because they, for the spur connections, I like because they cut off that corner between the Sweet Springs Trail and where you come on to Alpine Road. As a horse rider, when you're on that little segment along Alpine Road, you have to duck under a guy wire and simultaneously step across a storm drain with your horse. So it's a kind of a edgy part to ride on, but both of your options allow us to eliminate that troublesome part of the ride. So thank you. I would say, for my perspective, option 2 is preferred because it would allow us to avoid the steep downhill on the Sweet Springs and make that right turn into the Hawthorns area, which would be, you know, a little bit of a mellower downhill and route for the riders. The one reservation that you had was that there was a concern that you're going to be in the view shed of existing residences. I just wanted to offer my perspective that I think when I'm walking down Sweet Springs Trail, we're in the same view of the same residences. So I'm not sure that turning right into Hawthorns there adds or subtracts from that view of the homes that are already there. So once again, 2 thumbs up. I love all the options. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you very much. And just for clarification, if you look at the top of the slide that you're seeing at this time, it's www.openspace.org/public-comment, and we will get those here. Next is Liz Wagon.
Hi there, my name's Liz and I am a resident of Portola Valley Ranch. And I'm here to discuss the trail option 2 that is being proposed. And I'm one of the 15 homes. If you look at the purple area that's been highlighted on the map, it designates 15 homes that are in the view shed of this particular trail. And my opposition is that, you know, these homes were built for indoor, outdoor living. So each home has extensive decks. And so most of us live on those decks for spring, summer, and fall, at least I do. And there are, I've seen the yellow marking tags out there. And from those perspectives, people can not only see onto my deck, but into some of our homes. And so it's an issue of privacy. It's an issue of our homes. You know, the majority of the value in my home from a couple realtors is in my view and in my privacy. So I'm hoping that that trail can somehow be moved so that 15 homes aren't looking straight at it and vice versa. And the other issue is where the trail joins Sweet Springs, which is at the end of Pomponio Street. And my understanding is that that trail from Pomponio to Sweet Springs is on 2 private homes. This will have to be double checked because I talked to the property owners and they have given permission only for emergency vehicle use. And I'm gonna close there. And I also want to thank you all for all of your hard work in opening this amazing space. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, we have Charles Mahoney.
Hello, it's Charles Maroney, and I'm on Coyote Hill in Portola Valley Ranch. I submitted a letter, but basically, I'm writing to express my concerns about the recent additions to the Hawthorns planning process, specifically the trail connections to Sweet Springs Trail. Your original trail design, a 1.6-mile loop, showcased the properties and the views while avoiding the property issues of the immediate neighbors. The two additional options, option 2 and 3 in your recent maps, create several issues. Number 1, option 2, which consists of 2 trails, cross the most viewed piece of the property, 15 homes. The trails will view directly into the 15 homes' private areas, bedrooms, bathrooms, living areas. This is an obvious privacy issue. Number 2, both option 2 and option 3 terminate at the Sweet Springs Trail. This trail was created in 1975 with an easement for equestrian use only. I have attached the original easement document that I received from the town of Portola Valley. Specifically, pedestrian traffic is not included. No modifications to this easement have been made. This trail is on private property, Portola Valley Ranch. The trail meanders through approximately 50 homes, backyards, and front yards, all within earshot of the trail. There was never an understanding that this trail would be connected to a 50-car parking lot. This easement would never have been granted. 200 additional people on this trail daily will obviously affect the privacy of these residents. Additionally, the ranch has no ranger, no maintenance personnel to clean up the dog feces, the bagged dog feces, the litter, etc. This addition is not acting as a good neighbor. Number 3, both option 2 and 3 will create parking issues and noise issues on private streets for the users who use it, for overflow parking, or when parking is on the preserve is closed. Again, this is not acting as a good neighbor. Number 4 is my final one. Option 2 will create the potential to trespass across private property from the Hawthorns property to Pompodia Road. This easement on this trail is for emergency use only. Your plan creates a potential conflict. This again is not acting as good neighbor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our first public comment period. We've taken our 5. Did you have one more? Speaker, did you want to move forward or did you want to wait for the second batch?
You said there were 7.
It's like a couple of people submitted cards and
We can do that now. Okay, so let's continue with Judith Schwartz.
Hello, I am a ranger, a volunteer ranger over at Wonderlick, and I have been at Webb Ranch since 1987. So I'm one of the equestrians who would love to be on this trail. I ride at Windy Hill, but one of the problems is there hasn't been enough parking. And so I would just like to suggest that one of the great things about having horses be encouraged to be part of this is the joy that comes, not just for the people who are riding, but for the kids that see horses, whether they're there and you see them in the parking lot and they come to talk to you and they want to pet your horse, or you're on the trail and they see your horses. And so it's a really nice thing that makes Portola Valley and Woodside a really wonderful place that you actually have horses there. And so I appreciate what the homeowners are saying about the privacy. And I guarantee you, when you're riding your horse, you're paying attention to the horse and the trail, and you're not really trying to look in anybody's bathroom. I promise you, I think that we really have all tried to be good neighbors as we've been in trails throughout Woodside and throughout Portola Valley. And so I just encourage you to make it easy to park there. And if there's a good parking spot there for trailers, we won't bother the residents by parking on the streets or doing anything like that. So again, joy. Let's.
Okay, and next is Karen Askey.
Okay, I'm gonna consolidate here. Hi, everyone. I'm assuming that you received our written comments from the Portola Valley Ad Hoc Hawthorns Committee, but as the public doesn't have access to them, we'd like to review a few here. A robust planning process should take into consideration all alternatives, and by limiting parameters at the onset, less than optimal decisions may be made. To that end, 1, we respectfully request that the historic complex be included in the overall process, as there may be better parking and access options, as well as added trail interconnectivity. Number 2, we respectfully request that the Ranger residence and associated parking potential there be fully assessed. It seems as if this spot will have a much lower impact on resources and is in a better location. The plumbing is already there for the bathrooms, and the residence could be repurposed as an interpretive center. Number 3, we are pleased to see that a study session with our town council is now included. As our planning commission is responsible for addressing policy matters related to general land use and development in town, we also ask that you hold a preliminary study session with our planning commissioners as well. Your number one decision driver should be safety. It's not about saving dollars or resources. One human life or injury is one too many. The recent transportation study shows that there is considerably higher traffic along Alpine Road versus Los Trancos and considerably more accidents. And that does not incorporate the increase in volume due to the planned development along Alpine Road. Although sightlines on Los Trancos may be shorter, shouldn't traffic volume and rates of speed be taken into account? We also know that rates of speed increase due to the downward slope on Alpine Road from Portola Road, and that needs consideration. Some folks in Portola Valley refer to our general plan as the Bible of our town, as it creates the culture and ethos of our community. Please respect the Alpine Scenic Corridor principles, which state to keep the vista to the hills open. Not doing so may lead to heavy opposition from our community. Thank you.
Okay, and we have Kathy Laporte online. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kathy Laporte. Thanks everyone for your time and service on this project. I live on Quail Court in the Portola Valley Ranch, and if there were any more light out a few minutes ago, you could have seen Hawthorns right behind me. We have a wonderful view, and I really just want to echo the comments that were made earlier by some of the other Portola Valley Ranch residents. It is not the case that the current Sweet Springs Trail, someone made the comment that the number of hikers viewed by residents will be the same as it currently is, and that's absolutely not the case. I think our view will be significantly impacted by option 2. And I'm really opposed to it. And I hope you will consider, the impact on our property values. And honestly, we moved here from Menlo Park for the serenity of this community, and the views are a big part of that. And I also am about to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars redoing decks outside, that look right out on this property. And it's just a massive investment that we all make because we love the view in part. So I really hope you'll take it into consideration. I'm also concerned about the parking implications for the folks on Saddleback and Pomponio with, the proposed access points. And frankly, Pomponio is not a big street, and I can imagine people coming and parking on Quail as well. So I'm just, I just hope you really are thoughtful neighbors, because I'm really concerned about the neighborhood impact of this. Thank you.
Okay, and lastly, we have Christy Corley. Hold on just one moment while I have you unmute. Okay, go ahead. You go ahead and talk if you can.
Yes, thank you for everyone that's working on Hawthorns. Safety is always a top priority for our residents, public, and children of our town. The residents enjoy the natural beauty of the community, rather than seeing parking lots with 50 cars. Families chose to live in this natural environment with rolling hills, trees, wildlife, and we only have a few small grocery stores and a hardware store. Let's balance Portola Valley residents' safety needs with the MROSD's goals of providing public access to trails. The Alpine Trails needs to be appropriate for Safe Routes to School program, which is the San Mateo program. The ingress and egress driveway should not put children, parents, seniors at risk while they're walking or biking on Alpine Trail. Safety should be a priority even before the nature preserves mission statement. Other considerations that warrant moving the parking area inland is the supplemental housing that's being developed across the street from Hawthorns and next to Roberts. As you may be aware, that equestrian was already commented on. I'm opposed to the 50 parking places on Alpine Road. Parking along Alpine Road invites overflow onto Alpine Road because you can see Alpine Road from that location. We don't want to invite overflow parking such as Windy Hill issues, and we don't want to see the cars. When many residents toured off Hawthorns, parking was provided and it was convenient, easy, and not visible from Alpine Road. Stick with what worked. Windy Hill overflow parking is always a problem in the town, and MROSD should find solutions for Windy Hill and use resources to correct it, as it makes residents lose trust in the future parking decisions made by MROSD. And I encourage you,
Thank you.
as the
We
last
are
thing.
out of time on this chunk, and in the interest of keeping the process smooth, we respectfully ask that you that we're going to continue ahead, and if you have additional comments, there is a second comment period later on. So we will move forward. What is
Thank you, Rachel.
the next one? Does any, so their next item is to review the previous minute summary. Does any of the member of the working group have suggested changes to the meeting summary for the last meeting? Yes. Carrie.
A minor point on page 10.6, it should say Hillbrook instead of Willowbrook for the road being referenced.
All right. All in favor is all in favor of that correction? If we could just go quickly down and just say, we could just go down the line and just acknowledge with a aye or nay. Thank you. If you could just start. You could make sure to do it in the microphone so we can. Thank you.
I'd have to look at the reference. I'm sorry. Could you?
Yes.
Can you put on the screen the page that has the the correction is
Really was
just
just a
so
typo.
it's right.
You said it so quickly, but it's significant.
It's just a correction of a typo. According.
Well, Willowbrook
Is there-
and
is there
Hillbrook have
another road
impact
name
on
on-
MRI.
Willowbrook is not anywhere near the Hawthorn.
It's near,
Yeah.
Windy Hill, but not.
it's near
the
Windy
Hawthorns.
Hill.
Willowbrook instead of- But there is a Willowbrook.
Yeah, there is a
Yeah,
Willowbrook.
Not where they're referencing this. Are you sure? Take that.
All right. So do we need to pull it up or can we go ahead and go through to make the, to vote on the correction?
You ready? My vote is aye.
I vote aye.
I'll just abstain until I can see it, so, but it's just.
Aye.
I have to abstain. I was absent.
Aye.
I'll abstain because I really need to check it before I can vote on it.
Fair enough.
Vote aye. Say aye.
Aye.
So just to confirm that topic, I'm just reading the description here regarding safety along Alpine Road. a park member suggested working with the town of Portola Valley to locate a stop sign, roundabout, or other traffic slowing device at North First or Willowbrook. So here we
that should
change
be
it to
Hillbrook.
Hillbrook
That's
I
what we're
changed my vote
to
to-
slow
Yes.
down traffic and make the corridor safer.
It should be Hillbrook, yes.
So that's the. Are there any other adjustments or corrections?
If I may, Rachel, there was one opposed and 2 abstentions. David, understand yours. I think Karen, you wanted to hear the context.
Change my abstention to a yes. I also change it to yes. I just need to hear the sentence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Leaving just 1 abstention due to not being present.
Correct.
Yes, is there?
How will we accept the meeting summary?
And then we just go down the same line to accept the minutes again.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
All right, so that meeting minutes should be accepted. Summary is accepted, apologies.
Thank you, Rachel. I think if you'd like to open the working group business.
We can open the working group business to that. I believe you have the next round of information from you and Midpen. Is that correct?
Thank you. We did have several follow-up items from conversation at the previous meeting. Midpen's now going to follow up on these items from the 12-16 meeting and to share some additional information. Last time we received questions about the staff residence and the engagement process. And we've got Midpen Assistant General Manager Brian Malone here to address your previous question regarding the staff residence.
Good evening, Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. So, staff brought the suggestion to evaluate the staff residence for the possibility of a parking area to our executive team, myself, the other Assistant General Manager, CFO, and General Manager. And we considered that and looked at it. And our direction that we gave was not to proceed with further evaluation. And I just wanted to come tonight to give a little explanation for that, why that is. First, we do have a lot of residences up on Skyline that we use as staff residences. This is the only staff residence that we have in this area. As we've heard tonight, Windy Hill is a busy area with a lot of public use. It is very valuable for us to have a staff residence in the area to be available for emergency response or call outs, that sort of thing, or just additional coverage on busy days. So, and also having a staff residence there has really limited vandalism and impacts to the Hawthorns historic area. So that's another reason we found this to be very valuable, and that's from our lived experience with not having someone on the property and then having someone on the property, and it makes a huge difference. So one, that's very valuable. Now, the other thing that we have to look at is whether that site would be more valuable as a parking lot and we could develop housing somewhere else. And that I can just speak to the Open Space District's experience and developing housing. We took one shot in a totally different location, but in developing new housing. Being an open space agency and trying to find a location that isn't impactful to the environment and is not a large use of public funds, that's not towards our mission of preserving public open space, protecting it, and providing ecologically sensitive public access is extremely difficult. All the resources that we have that are needed for our residents are already in place at this location, and it's extremely difficult to permit and develop a new location, somewhere else on this property or in the preserve. Particularly when there's, like the rest of Windy Hill has a public access already. And it would be very difficult for us to do and accept the impacts to natural resources. The other thing I want to mention is that the house itself is the retaining wall for the hill. So you might think, oh, if you remove the house, there would be this great flat space. But in fact, you would have to do the work that you would have to do somewhere else, more so because of the natural slope of the land. You would actually have to install a retaining wall to replace what the house currently does. It's basically built into the hillside. That's why it has a large garage in the bottom. So after considering and discussing those factors, that's why we gave direction not to proceed with further investigation into that site. One, it's very valuable for us as a resource to have a staff residence there. Two, developing it would be impactful to our financial resources and also environmentally. And then three, the site without the house is probably not superior to other sites because of the geographic nature of where the house is sited. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And I'm just going to walk you quickly through this updated workflow and engagement opportunities. So we are at phase 3, programming and conceptual planning. This was shared at meeting 3, and the only change or update we're having is this town council engagement process. So we're still going to complete all the public access working group meetings we have, probably until June. And all the recommendations will be forwarded and brought to Midpen's Planning and Natural Resources Committee, PNR, as we planned before. Additionally, pending the PNR's recommendation, our project team will gather feedback and gather the feedback from the town council as well as the ad hoc committee and have board study sessions if needed. The board will not make any final decisions until the feedback are collected from the town. Then I'm going to pass it to Brian Apple, our capital projects manager, to talk about the trails.
Thank you, Ashley. Brian Apple, capital projects field manager in our land and facilities department. Good evening. All right, so we'll take a look at the conceptual trail system. I do want to point out to the POG that we did make some modifications to the map to kind of help clarify the various segments. So each individual segment has now been allocated a number that's associated with it so that you can kind of reference individual segments, because the way we're looking at this now, you know, initially we had our loop opportunity that our crew scouted to provide sort of that short loop opportunity. And then based on the feedback that we received from the POG, we looked at these various connections, you know, the connection to Sweet Springs, you know, that's been referred to as option 2 by the previous commenters, you know, various connections to Alpine Road. You know, so I'll kind of point you to numbers like 10 through 15 really represent a lot of those additions to the trail. What we're seeing here is more of like a network rather than an individual loop. And again, when we're out taking a look at these trails, we're receiving feedback from the POG, and we're looking at what is constructible, what can we build that's a sustainable alignment. And so basically what you can see now is, you know, our initial efforts to identify that loop opportunity, taking feedback from the POG and from public comments, some comments as well from various town committees, to come up with this various network. And again, I think as you're discussing the conceptual trail system, you now have sort of numeric values for or numbers assigned to each individual segment. And so you can consider, you know, some grouping of various segments to kind of move forward with. And there's various considerations with each element. The other thing to note is that there's the bench locations are identified with the symbology representing the benches with a letter rather than a number. And again, these are alignments that we've found to be feasible from a constructability standpoint, trying to minimize impacts on natural resources. Again, the alignments referred to as option 2 do encroach on that view shed for some of the adjacent residences. But again, that's, a request from the POG to look at those connections to existing trail networks being, Sweet Springs Trail, Alpine Road Trail, et cetera. And then, as a future part, not necessarily part of this process, but, there is the consideration that we've heard from the POG shown by the gray arrows on the map. And that, that connection to Los Trancos, the connection to the historic complex. Again, we've heard that feedback from the POG, and that's why they're shown as those double-ended arrows on this map. However, they are, not necessarily a part of this public access working group. And then one thing I do want to point out, you can see that arrow identifying, I think it's along maybe segment 3, if I can see that accurately. You can see that double-sided black arrow with that 120-foot figure shown there. That's just to show the proximity of the proposed loop to the Alpine Road Trail. And we do have a photo kind of representing sort of the visual difference there, and I'll show that in a forthcoming slide. This is, again, that same map with the same symbology, just this is showing all of the various constraints, so our trail system overlaid on the original constraints map. And again, the purple area being the view shed from those adjacent houses, the diamonds being the dusky-footed wood rat middens, and then we have our sensitive habitat polygons and our historic olive grove, as well as some other elements to the site. So just a different way to visualize this. You guys are probably familiar now with the constraints overlay and the aerial imagery, but just another way to visualize that. This will probably just take a second. There's some larger images. So here you can see some representative photos, and it has the trail section number associated with it. So you can see, the grassland habitat as it's transitioning into the oak woodland. The photo from trail section 3, again, looking down towards the Alpine Road Trail. So you can see there's, fairly heavy vegetation there that kind of provides that visual screening, plus the topographic gradient there that separates the loop trail from the Alpine Road Trail. So it doesn't feel like you're right on top of the Alpine Road Trail when you're on that proposed loop trail. And then you can see in the lower photo, the proposed trail section 4, where you're kind of in the grassland and woodland mosaic. And I think we have one more set of representative photos. It might take a second to load because these are large image files. And again, you can see in that kind of lower right corner of the slide, there's the map showing where those photo points are basically taken. You can see the number 6 and 8. So photo 6 being up, right at the top, just outside of that purple area on the existing loop trail, where you're within the oak woodland habitat. And then photo 8, where you're up on the knoll with the more expansive views. And again, you're sort of just outside of that purple area that's within the adjacent homes view shed. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley to talk about, or do you want me to cover key trail considerations? Okay. Yeah, so I'll cover these key trail considerations. So in relation to public access, site amenities is something we've heard from the public access working group. The desire to provide benches in select locations that provides the opportunity for the public to enjoy those vista points and some of the other high value elements of the property. Another site amenity that would be considered is a vault toilet. at the future on-site parking area. This is fairly typical for what we offer at all of our parking lots. You know, typically we're not within municipal water system. So we rely on our vault toilet to provide restroom facilities. And then consider an associated rain catchment system to supplement resource management activities that may occur on the property. So having that water, whether it be for, outplanting of stock grown container plants and continued restoration efforts. Signage is another amenity that's considered. So ensure that the public access amenities include relevant signage, to ensure that the public knows where they're going, what the trail connections are, whatever those are determined to be, so that the public is informed as to where they're going, where they're heading. Ensure that signboards, interpretive panels, as appropriate, are installed, and then relevant regulations, as well as resource management signs, because again, there'll likely be ongoing resource management activities at the site. The other thing to consider is aesthetic resources, the view sheds of the property. And again, that's something we've heard, a lot of the public commenters identifying. So really trying to reduce effects on the view sheds in the vicinity of the Hawthorns area. And then the desire to highlight the key vistas visible from the Hawthorns area. So when you're looking out from the property, whether it be San Francisco Bay or other adjacent natural areas, so highlighting those elements from the property. And then, of course, again, from the view shed standpoint, just showcasing the actual Hawthorns area, natural beauty, and the internal features that are on the site for the public's enjoyment. Oh, there's one slide before. For this. Okay. Sorry, just bear with me for a second. Okay. Continuing with public access considerations, public use. One thing that will need to be considered is adjacent uses, the potential user groups of the site, which is something that the POG has discussed in some detail up to this point. And then trying to understand user perspectives in defining those allowable uses, whether it's, hiking, equestrian, dog access, mountain biking within the Hawthorns area, given that it is a small site, to manage conflict, manage natural resources, and address safety concerns. Of course, providing opportunities for ecologically sensitive public recreation is one of the core tenets of the district. So including hiking and and equestrian access fits well within that ecologically sensitive public recreation. Consider allowing bike use along the perimeter of the Hawthorns area at Alpine Road to connect, other regional bike accessible trails. And then, of course, considering the site for dog access and on-leash activities for dogs. So something to consider as well. And then considering easy access trail opportunities where feasible and practicable. The site is, topographically diverse, so easy access trail alignments can be challenging when you have steep terrain, but it is something to consider. So for the trails themselves, consider the site's topography, the existing vegetation communities, the other sensitive natural resources that are on site, and develop that internal trail system that aligns with the public access framework and vision and goals that were developed for the project. And that's something, we always need to consider as a government agency is the financial and operational stability and sustainability when considering the trail user experience. And then looking at opportunities to provide some of these regional connections, given that we do have existing trail networks and we have other public lands in the area that provide linkage while ensuring, respect of private property and so forth. So the other alternative really is to consider a closed loop on the site, just providing that internal loop opportunity rather than looking at it as sort of more of a regional piece of the puzzle. The right direction. Here are some views showing the proposed bench locations. So again, if you look at the lower right corner of the slide, you can see the locations of each of these benches. And all three obviously are in locations based on those photographs that are within the grassland and provide each a unique vista point looking in various directions. Location A is looking out towards the bay, location B looking up towards Windy Hill, and then location C, that kind of sweeping expanse of the Hawthorns property itself, and then the surrounding terrain in that area. And then just to note at location A, you can see the Stanford dish from that location and the bay on a clear day. And so something else, again, for the POG to consider, what are the trail use designations at Hawthorns? So hiking, equestrian, dogs on leash, and mountain bikes are all things that can be considered for the property. And the POG needs to consider the size of the property, whether it is the internal loop option, like the closed loop system, or if it's a regional piece that's connected to other parts of existing trail networks and other adjacent open spaces such as Windy Hill and some of the other preserves in the area. So consider the capacity of the site and the overall desired trail connections, whether it be loop or regional. And I think it's important to consider the trade-offs of these multiple uses because when you try to accommodate a wide range of user groups, it's important to realize that adding more trail mileage and uses could mean more parking needs, right? And if we're trying to minimize parking and keep that tighter, that could result in some unintended consequences. And Rancho San Antonio is kind of a good example where we have 5 big parking areas, but still not enough to accommodate user desire and interest. So again, from the comments we've heard, from the feedback we've heard from the POG, this is why we need to plan carefully. And then, in talking about parking size, right? Here's a good example of some comparisons, from some other mid-pen properties and then other open space areas managed by other agencies. And you can see the multiplying factor there, right? Where Hawthorns is a 79-acre parcel. And then you can see we obviously haven't defined our trail mileage yet, but you can look at the other properties' relative trail mileage. And you can see just sort of how small Hawthorns is relative to these other parks and preserves. And then you can look at the number of spots and then the annual visitation and arrive at some considerations when you're looking at parking. But again, Hawthorns at the very smallest end of the kind of sample sites that we share here. And again, you can see that kind of multiplying factor there. So again, just something to consider when we're thinking about total trail mileage, total parking area size. And then, in terms of trail use, for example, Thornwood allows pedestrian, equestrian, and dog on leash, but no bike access. And as shown in, kind of our schematic for the potential trails, we're looking at about 1.5 miles So that would be comparable to what we see at Thornwood. I think a lot of people kind of consider Hawthorns to be a lot like Arastradero, but again, Arastradero is 8 times the size of Hawthorns, and has quite a bit more extensive trail network, but relies on 40 spots and, has a fairly high annual visitation rate of 171,000. And then Paul. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paul Stevenson, the landscape architect, designer for the parking areas at the Hawthorns area. So we've all kind of seen options 1 through 6 so far. So now I'm going to talk about options 7 and 8. So this is similar to the previous, let's see, let's get a highlighter, laser pointer. So the previous options that we had, it brings the existing entry drive off of Alpine Road and has the same alignment as previously. We cross the 75-foot Alpine Road scenic corridor, and there's no structures within this corridor on this option. So we take the existing driveway, we loop it around and bring it down into the Hawthorns meadow. There's no changes to that from the previous alternatives that we've shown. This option doesn't go into the North Meadow, though. We only stay within the Hawthorns area. And a good way to look at this option is it's a phased option. So phase 1, you can see kind of that the 22 stalls along the oak edge. We do that in phase 1, and then we'd have a loop at the end to turn around for that parking area for phase 1. If we wanted to add an additional 18 stalls for a total of 40 stalls, we could go on the other side and do another 40 or total of 40 stalls there. And the one thing that is slightly difficult to see on this option to kind of get the full 50 stalls that we it was kind of the goal previously. We'd remove the kind of turnaround right here, the circle turnaround, and add 10 stalls right at, along the oaks right there. And there'd have to be a hammerhead turnaround. And that's not as ideal as kind of the circle turnaround. So that's why kind of that's the 3rd phase of the options. And that would get a total of 50 stalls there. So kind of in the comparison chart here, this is still kind of similar to the last one, more expensive than the other option 8, which we'll get to, just because we're going up and through with the large entry driveway. And we also have, let's see, it's hard for me to read. I don't know if you can read the comparison chart better than I can, but it's also more tree removal in this area because we're going through more area. The square footage of driveway is larger because it's a much larger driveway compared to option number 8. So let's take a look at the sections of this. And this is kind of one of the reasons we like this area. You can kind of see in the section, it's relatively level in this area, and there's not as much grading where the parking is going to go for this option. That's kind of why we chose this area for parking. So for option number 8, it looks probably almost identical as a previous option to you, except the main difference obviously is we flipped the entry drive. So right now the entry drive is coming to the east of the parking lot, whereas before it was coming to the west side. We're at the historical drive. And so that allows, I mean, Andrew will talk about this after me, but it allows for better traffic management coming off of Alpine Road. And on this option as well, you can kind of see the 75-foot scenic corridor line there, and we're keeping all of the restrooms and other structures outside of that 75-foot scenic corridor. So that is option number 8. And we'd previously discussed kind of how it would view from Alpine Road Trail or the Alpine Road. And this diagram kind of shows someone standing across the street with a view corridor or a line of sight looking onto the property. And we proposed putting vegetation there previously, but there were some concerns about fire hazards. So we're talking about now maybe putting boulders, like large 3-foot, 4-foot boulders, strategically placed where there isn't as much existing vegetation. And that would help screen the parking from the roadway from Alpine Road. And also on this option, we've taken out kind of the retaining wall along the back, and we just kind of feather in the existing grades to the cut that we're going to do for the parking lot. So that's what these sections show right here. And this is a view along the existing Alpine Road. On the left side, that's the current conditions. As you can kind of see, some of the existing vegetation blocks the views to the parking lot, and where there's breaks, we're talking about putting larger boulders, kind of like the ones shown above, like 3-foot, 4-foot boulders in front of the parking area. Not too much to overwhelm, but just to screen the cars from the Alpine Road. So that is all the options for 7 and 8 of the existing parking or proposed parking. So the existing conditions. Okay. So this is option number 7. I'm sure you're all familiar with this area. It's what we're calling the Hawthorns Meadow. And this is just the view kind of to the west, looking at where the driveway would be coming in. And this is where the parking lot number 8 would be. This is a view from the east looking towards the west, and the parking lot would kind of come in straight along the view and be hidden by the trees on the right side from Alpine Road.
Good evening, Andrew Lee. I'm the consultant traffic engineer for Midpen. Loud enough? Really? Okay, I will speak up even more. All right. So I just want to back off from the alternatives and give a bit of context about the traffic study that we embarked on with Midpen. So in 2019, the town of Portola Valley collected 1-week traffic counts townwide. And to assess what's changed over the last 4 years, Midpen gave us the assignment to collect new traffic counts for an entire week. And so those count locations are indicated on the map before you in yellow. There are 3 counts on Alpine Road, 1 at Westridge, 1 near Nathorst, and 1 west of Portola Road. And then there is a 4th count on Los Trancos Road near the town limit. And I'm just going to break down what those results yielded. So we collected traffic counts in late November and early December. The town counts that were collected occurred in October. And you'll notice that the counts have decreased in the last 4 years. Notably, Alpine Road east of Westbridge has around 12,000 vehicles. This is a location that was noted in the town's wildfire evacuation study as a location where it's estimated that it would have the most traffic demand in the case of an emergency evacuation event. And in that area, the study recommended widening the roadway shoulder to act as a second outbound or northbound lane in order to provide that supplemental emergency access capacity. I'm highlighting Alpine Road east of Nathorst because this is the site, the count location that is nearest the Hawthorns site. And there are 5,000 fewer daily vehicles in this location. The capacity of the roadway is somewhat above what you're seeing at Westridge. So The count at Alpine and Nathorst is indicating that the vehicle capacity of the road on a daily basis is occupying about half that capacity. One other thing that we were looking at is the proposed amount of development as put forth in the housing element that the town prepared. Near Westridge, there are around 120 housing units that could be developed based on the housing elements set aside. At Nathorst, the housing potential is closer to around 50 housing units. And so the degree of change is higher potential development near Westridge and lower near Nathorst. And it's also commensurate with the amount of existing and projected future traffic demand. Simplifying that, there's just less traffic near Nathorst, and it's not quite near capacity. When you go past West Portola, when you go west of Portola Road, the amount of traffic for vehicles drops even further, and it's comparable to what's at Los Trancos, which has the fewest daily traffic out of all the 4 counts that were collected. Now, I'm also going to touch on the annual and seasonal trends because we collected in November and December, and there is a possibility, of course, that there was lower traffic. So we went and pulled information from this big data traffic company called Replica, and they have counts for both weekdays and weekends dating back to 2021. So you can see that traffic here doesn't really follow a logical trend year on year. It seems to have peaked in fall of 2021, and then it's slowly been decreasing. And it is more or less in line with what we observed at Nathorst, albeit a slight difference in the weekend count. This may also be a function of averaging Saturday and Sunday, but in terms of the weekday count, they are pretty close. And then talking about walking and bicycling counts, the town's data in 2019 did not have this information, so we don't have anything to compare these counts against. However, we do have some big data sources that I'll be touching on. I'm highlighting Alpine east of Nathorst again because that is adjacent to the Hawthorns site, and this is the location with the greatest amount of walking and bicycling demand. It's pretty substantial. And when you dig a little bit deeper, looking at the difference in demand between weekdays and weekends, the top chart that you see on the right is bicycle demand, and those 2 big hills that stand out above everything else, those are Saturday and Sunday. So the bicycling traffic on weekends is much, much higher than what's occurring during the weekdays. There are a few weekdays, I think it's Tuesday, where there is one really big spike around midday. And looking at that data, it appears to be a large group ride. Throughout the rest of the weekdays, however, the amount of activity doesn't really compare in terms of how much traffic there is. And then I just want to bring your attention to the figure on the lower right, which is the vehicle volumes, to show how the bicycle traffic peak compares to the vehicle traffic peak. And in this case, the weekday vehicles, those are the 2 peaks in the morning and in the evening. And the weekend is that hill with no peaks. And so the takeaway from there is that, for one, the busiest that it gets with vehicles on weekends is no worse than the busiest midday activity on weekdays. The second takeaway is that the greatest amount of bicycling activity occurring on the weekends does not occur at the same time as any pronounced demand for vehicle traffic on the weekends on Alpine Road in your busiest section of this study. We counted them on both sides. And then one last thing about bicycle traffic, we collected in November and December. It is reasonable to assume that it's busier during the summer, and we took some big data traffic counts from Strava. And it shows that summers are definitely busier. And in 2020 and 2021, there was a very, very pronounced peak in bicycling traffic, but it's since receded. It's still above what the conditions were in 2019. So you are seeing more bicycling traffic in 2022 and 2023, but it is beyond, it is less than the very, very large peak back during the height of the pandemic. And so we did develop some adjustment factors for bicycling traffic just so that we correctly represent and adjust based on these seasonal estimates. And so for Alpine east of Hawthorns, we counted about 850 during the weekend. But with that adjustment factor, it could be up to about 1,400, 1,500 people during the day at the peak of summer. So it is quite a substantial amount of people on the road biking. All right, with that in mind, I'm going to go back and discuss the driveway options. Access driveway option 7 has been presented before. It is the existing site entry opposite Roberts Market. It has a slope that is relatively even, flat, level. And there are not very many trees in that area. The tree cover is relatively light. And the other feature worth calling out is that it's about 500 feet from an existing stop-controlled intersection at Portola Road. And so in terms of improvement strategies, given its naturally occurring advantages, a gateway sign and possibly some trail crossing markings are about what we would recommend in order to call attention to that site and trying to resolve any sort of intermodal conflicts. With the benefit of even topography and being at the top of a hill, people on bike will be moving less quickly than the other site here, which is option number 8. Now, this is different from the prior alternative, which would have introduced that driveway at the historic drive. And I'll say that with this one, it is better than that prior option for the reasons of less overhead tree cover and being outside of the shadows being cast in that corridor. This entry to the northeast is close to Hillbrook, and there is, again, less tree cover. The slope begins to flatten out here. It is still at around 2 to 3%, so it is not level. And I will acknowledge that being at the bottom of the slope means that people on bike will still be going fast. But the tree cover and the amount of shadows that would be cast in this area, and also with the slope adjacent to Alpine Road, it is much more level in the shoulders. I was just out there today taking a look at it. The historic driveway has a embankment that is much steeper and higher and does impede sight lines when exiting the site. And so this location is better for sight lines when people are trying to come in and out of the site. That said, there are more improvement strategies in that I would recommend as a traffic engineer to make this location safer. So one thing is that this is within the town of Portola Valley's jurisdiction, and so they have the final say as to what they want to do, but additional signs and markings, possibly recommending a daylight headlight section because of that issue with the shadows, and then adding more shared lane markings. I'll highlight that this portion of the shoulder is not officially a bike lane. The section in Ladera, which has been recently improved with all kinds of green markings and dashing, well, you need to actually categorize this shoulder as a bike lane before you can go and do all that. And so there's quite a bit of partnership and collaboration that would need to be done with the town of Portola Valley to make all that happen. And then lastly, the same issues with, same recommendations with gateway signs and trail crossing markings, and possibly thinning the tree cover in order to make this location less susceptible to intermodal conflict. I think that's it for me. There we go.
Thank you, Andrew and Paul, for very comprehensive explanation for the parking and driveway entrance and the traffic study. So I am going to basically use the board-approved project goals as a way to help you compare those two options, option 7 and 8 for parking and driveway. As you can see here, those are the 6 project goals that our board approved as part of the phase 1 of this project. And I think they've been presented to you at the first meeting, and you're probably very familiar with that. So keeping that in mind, last time we walked through natural resources considerations for the parking options. And this meeting, we're going to look at the natural resources considerations as well, but adding additional considerations. So for those who are not familiar with the moon chart, that is a way for our board members to evaluate different options. So the moon chart, the white part basically means the weakest aligned with their criterias, and the black portion means strongest aligned with the criterias. So looking at option 7, you can see the site is staying away from the riparian area and is generally can stay within the existing driveway footprint, which are preferred. And on the other side for option 8, you can see because it is staying closer to the existing disturbed area, Alpine Road, so it has minimum human impact to the preserve. Also, because of the smaller footprint, as well as the less retaining wall and a very short driveway, it is considered a better option as well. Also, it has requires less vegetation removal when it comes to field management, and that is under the jurisdiction of Woodside Fire Department. When it comes to public access considerations, we are splitting that into visitor experience and traffic safety. And I will go into the traffic safety shortly. From visitor experience perspective, option 8 does provide minimum conflict when it comes to trail users and cars. Also, for those that have been to Hawthorns, the Hawthorns meadow right now, it's very quiet, and you probably have encountered some wild animals, and you don't hear the cars. So it is a more quiet space compared to we call North Meadow, which is along Alpine Road. So we know traffic safety is a majority concern for the town, and we want to highlight in terms of traffic safety, we look at option 7, the driveway access has adequate line of sight, as well as option 8. And for option 7, it does maximize traffic safety condition versus option 8, it improves traffic safety condition compared to option 4. Basically, the updated driveway entrance is safer than the driveway entrance from the historic driveway. So in that regard, option 7 is a better choice. When it comes to local and regional connectivity considerations, both options allow visitors to connect to adjacent trails and open space. But in comparison, option 8, the amenities are more accessible because they are closer to the existing road. From the aesthetics, we are looking at it from the trail users' experience. So option 7, it is completely not visible from Alpine Road, and it is visible when you are using the trails as a trail user. And we are looking at option 8, which is along Alpine Road. It minimizes visibility from the trail's perspective. And want to point out, as Paul mentioned, that the restroom structure stays out of the 75 feet setback, and the parking is in alignment with Alpine Road scenic corridor. Lastly, from operations and maintenance perspective, option 7 prioritize reusing the existing driveway and consider impacts to adjacent roadway and parking. Option 8 does the same job. At the same time, it provides better access for law enforcement, park rangers, and emergency personnel, and that has been brought up before by our rangers. It also has less development, which means easier to maintain. So to summarize all these considerations that I just mentioned, so basically for option 7, it maximizes traffic safety and minimize visibility from Alpine Road. Option 8, minimize natural resources impacts, enhance trail users' experience, and reduces operational requirements. And we know you have a lot of thoughts, and we are not here to make you forward to the PNR 1 option. So you have the choice to develop your recommendations and forward more than one option. So now it's time to pass it to Kathy for clarification questions.
So that was a lot of data and some terrifically helpful clarifying data, I think. So if there are any questions, we can draw on the experts we've got here. Are there any questions to do with what we've just been listening to? Start with Rachel and then go to Charlie.
My question is for the Trails Committee. And when we talked about parking originally, we talked about potentially a phased approach to building more parking structures. And one of the things, as we've been talking about the trails, is there's pretty consistent agreement over the loop trail, and then the connectors are the ones where there are varying perspectives from the town, from the POG. Is it possible to do a phased approach in building the trails?
Right.
Brian Apple, Capital Projects Field Manager. Yeah, there is the alternative to take a phased approach for the project, but that would have to come from the, at this point, from the POG recommending it to our PNR committee. So it's something that's feasible to accomplish, but would require recommendation from this group.
Thank you.
Charlie, I think you were next.
Brian, you had a slide about the public access framework, and conspicuously bolded there was bikes on the periphery. In one of our first meetings, we talked about the public access framework, and I asked the question, are these the constraints for our design? And we're not to go past those. And I was told that we should consider bikes for the whole area. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about bikes if that's not to be. So what are the constraints?
Sure. So I think, and Ashley can also provide comment on this too, but the framework is sort of like a guidance there. And again, it's for the POG to consider these various elements, right? So it's not stating there's nothing prohibiting bike use in the interior of the preserve, to the best of my knowledge. So again, it really comes down to the POG taking that into consideration and then making that recommendation on the various trail uses and where it fits within various segments, right? Because it could be, you know, all uses on all trails, or it could be you identify that bike use is only appropriate on specific portions of the trail, depending on what the kind of final recommendation is to the PNR committee. Okay, that's helpful.
Kind of more consistent with what I heard before. I'm glad for the clarification. Brian, on the Ranger residence and parking there, did you guys consider allowing disabled access parking there?
So we didn't specifically discuss that, but any parking arrangement would have to provide disabled access parking spaces.
But probably at the side of the main lot.
Yeah, that would be where you would typically want to provide it. So we did not discuss that.
Okay. The feeling was expressed the other night that if you're disabled, you really need to get into the center of the park. And parking down option 8, you know, you're not going to, well, it's difficult to move around. And I just wanted to give some visibility to that issue. So thank you. Thank you. And then quickly on parking lot design, option 8, we show a cross-section CC where if you look at that cross-section, it seems like visibility-wise from the street, you've kind of solved the problem. I'm worried that if that cross-section were drawn a little farther to the west, you could really see the parking lot. And I'm wondering, was that considered?
It was considered on the, yeah. This, this picture right here, this was taken basically standing at the historic drive viewing to the east. So this picture right here is kind of like the most visibility you'd have onto the site with the least amount of vegetation. I know there was some images shown where it's like you look directly onto the site, and that's kind of like 50 feet forward where that break is between the trees. And kind of what I was saying before about the boulders, those boulders would still block the views, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the parked cars behind them. So that was kind of our gesture to screen the parking lot from Alpine Road. Does it? Okay.
Willie and Sandy after that.
I just want to say these plans have been so responsive to the problems. The first plans looked so enormously destructive and huge. I'm really thankful that you've come up with some good alternatives and good ideas about traffic and low impact and low sight lines. It's just really wonderful to see the new alternatives.
Thank you, Willie. Sandy, and did I see Scott? Yep. And then David, thank you.
Thanks. I wanted to talk about the subject of, or to ask a few clarifying questions about the subject of overflow parking. I guess the questions are, what does Midpen usually do at their preserves when there's overflow parking that kind of spills off the site and onto the adjacent streets? And then what do we think would need to be done in this situation to address that concern that's been raised a fair bit?
Brian Malone, Assistant General Manager. So I mean, it's variable. So and a lot of it depends on whether the parking is legal. So you might have a situation where it's posted no parking, and then the local law enforcement jurisdiction could enforce the no parking, and our rangers also do, even though it's off-site, will enforce no parking when it's most likely related to preserve visitors. Or there might be a situation where there's no posting, but it's not a legally safe place to park. You're basically blocking the lane of traffic, and that would be the same thing. If there is sufficient space to get out of the roadway, then that would be legal parking, and it would be up to working with the local jurisdiction to decide whether they wanted to make any changes to the parking regulations. And we've worked with various neighbors in extremely high use places, like Rancho San Antonio. There have been neighborhoods where posted just resident parking on the weekends, or locations where areas like Lower Prisma, where it's just been posted no parking, where there isn't typically parking available that wouldn't infringe on the driving lane. And then to speak specifically to the Windy Hill parking lot. So we did work with the town to sign overflow parking at the town hall, but the town has not decided to post no parking on the roadside adjacent. So there is roadside parking available that people that want to use it, although we do encourage the off-site parking at the town hall.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Sandy, did that answer your question?
Well, there was still sort of the second half, which was, do we think any of those types of measures would be needed here near the Hawthorns?
I'm sure Brian can weigh in on that, but I think reflecting back on the slide with the size of the preserve and the length of trails and so on is one to consider, because of, I think Brian described it really nicely. But also the number of uses within the trail at the preserve itself does have some bearing on that, and we haven't really landed on that yet. So I think there are still some unknowns there because it's still got some mutability in it.
So it sounds like you're saying that as to whether there would be overflow parking somewhat depends upon the number of multiple uses that are permitted on the trail system. That
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. The other thing I would say is it's very much, parking is very something that's, you can use adaptive management for. So you can see, it is very typical. I'll give the example of, we opened a Sears Ranch parking lot in La Honda. Immediately upon opening, because it's a new place, huge amounts of overflow parking, letters like, oh, it's terrible, we told you, kind of like, and, we responded to people and talked to them. And then, 3 months later, that died down. So I would expect, probably a new site that you might see something like that immediately, but then looking at over time and using adaptive management, working with the town, adaptive management works with parking issues. You can see if there's a problem and then address it.
great. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. I think we had Scott, David, then Karen.
Great, thank you. A couple of clarifying questions about the Sweet Springs Trail and the proposed connections there. We've heard during public and oral comments and written comment about it being exclusively an equestrian trail. Just trying to get a sense of, from staff, if that there's concurrence that that's an equestrian only trail, and is that being enforced as an equestrian only trail, or is it actually being used as a multimodal?
That's a good question. So that slide was shared previously at one of our meetings. Let me find that for you. And that basically address the question. So on the screen, it shows the Sweet Springs Trail right now is colored in yellow. And based on the town trail plan, it is a, let me look closely. So for the yellow one, I believe it is pedestrian, equestrian, dog on leash. So no bike.
Okay, so it's both equestrian as well as dog on leash walking. Hiking.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. David.
Well, I guess I'll start with parking first and then go on to trails. So I just had a clarifying question. If options 7 and 8 are now the final and last options, or is option 9 able to be on the table? And specifically what I'm referring to, and this map might help out here, is to the existing driveway. To the west of the existing driveway, you could put in a parking lot very similar to option 8. You could avoid all of the traffic issues associated with option 8, which I'm not convinced can really be successfully mitigated. I think that's kind of a dangerous spot myself. But if you were to put the parking lot to the west of there, then you're putting all of the parking lots in the same area of the town. You're across the street from a gas station, from a shopping center, from a hardware store, from a grocery store. So all the cars are then in the same visual corridor. And I think you could have a much safer ingress and egress using the existing road. And I suggested that in October. Initially, I haven't seen any further discussion of that, so I'll take an answer to that first.
Could you clarify? So you were saying, trying to find a map. West of that drive.
And may have been discussed when I was not here, so if
Yeah,
that's
and
the
we
case,
did
my apologies.
discuss that. There was a conversation about that, but it is within the conservation easement, so we cannot develop anything kind of west of the existing driveway. We can't put driveways or parking lots in that area.
Okay.
Yeah, so this map shows, you see this dashed red line? That is the boundary for the conservation easement. So west of it, it is called unimproved area, which means there is no development we can put in. And also there is no tree removal or anything. So the only area we are allowed to provide public access for parking is within this area, which is called the improved area.
And that was a deed with the land when it was transferred initially, as I
So this
recall?
is under the conservation easement owned by Post. Yeah, so there's
Okay.
no, it's inherited as part of
Okay.
the property.
So it's very logical, but impossible. Okay, then on the trails, I had a couple of clarifying questions. I like the gray arrows indicating the potential future access for regional trail access, and I think that regional trail access is a really important piece of this because it's a parcel that allows all of the people that are, on the other side of 280 to gain access to all of the preserves that are west of 280 and up to Skyline and to the ocean. And I would hope that the small gray arrow should really be crossing the historic complex and pointing to a Arastradero Preserve. I think we should be very intentional that's, for me anyway, that's a very critical aspect of the trail system. And that if we want to be very explicit, that would be a connection specifically to a Arastradero Preserve. And there is a trail corridor that comes out of a Arastradero Preserve that, talk to the property owners along there. So I think it's a very feasible future possibility once the historic complex issues are worked out. And just further to, talk about that a little deeper, I think it's an equity issue. I think there's a lot of people that are underserved and historically not gaining access to these preserves, and this is an opportunity to be very explicit about welcoming those traditionally underserved communities up into this area. And for that reason, I also really strongly support bicycle access on all of the preserve, and including a bicycle access going out of the preserve. So another gray arrow going along into the Portola town system or something to get to Alpine Road, which then would allow that connectivity all the way from the bay up to Skyline. And I just think that should be a very explicit recommendation of the POG to make those connections something that is part of this plan, even though we can't do, all of those things until the historic complex is worked out.
Could I just jump in to check what the question was, since this is our chance to ask questions of the experts? Okay, it was just sharing. We want to make sure that we take advantage of our time well, and I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
I'll interpret the questions that first of all, the one about the parking, which I think we addressed, but also the gray arrows to, really, can we look at broadening those connections?
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Do you have further thoughts, David? That's it. Karen.
I had some question about parking for Andrew. It's really into the weeds here, but I think it's really important that you pointed out that the distance between I'll call it the new driveway and Hillbrook is only 40 feet. So that creates an offset T intersection. And I did some nerdy research and found a study in Michigan that happened in 2020 and said that offset T intersections are 25% more accidents in rural areas than if it was a direct intersection. So that really concerns me. And I wonder if you could speak to that because it is quite hard to turn on left on Hillbrook. And it's not only just Hillbrook, there's 6 other streets behind there that use that driveway. So I'm really concerned with, we talked a lot about bicycles, but we didn't really, having people 40 feet away also turning at the same time and having a backup into, for people trying to turn left into the preserve, and just that offset T seems another complication with option 8.
Understood. I wonder if I could pull that exhibit up. A bit of a lag. Oh, I can do that here. While that's pulling up, I'll say for offset Ts, I am very familiar with them. The safety issue for those is worse when there are left turn pockets or center left turn lanes, because vehicles that are trying to turn left can both enter a center left turn lane, and absence of turn pocket or any sort of assignment for that kind of stagger, like somebody going southbound wants to turn left, someone northbound wants to go left. If there is a center left turn pocket, they could simultaneously try to occupy that space. That is definitely something that does happen. In this particular condition, there is no such left turn pocket. And in the existing condition, what would happen is that opposing vehicles trying to turn left would have to remain in their own travel lane, and cars and bikes behind them would need to stop. But with that offset, they would not be so close that they couldn't just pass each other and turn left. So there is enough offset, given that there is no center left turn lane, for that particular collision risk to not be like an active collision concern.
Are you familiar?
Turning right out of the driveway and turning and left out of Hillbrook, that, yes, that could happen. They would have to watch out for each other, much like any other intersection out there. The question I would have to run through is how much traffic is coming out of Hillbrook, how much traffic is coming out of the driveway, and how much traffic is on Alpine Road and how fast is it going. So I think the primary issue from what I see is that the traffic on Alpine Road is actually going quite fast. It's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, which means that a lot of times the traffic that's recorded is going at around 40 and sometimes in excess of 40 miles an hour. And a lot of the difficulty in pulling out of Hillbrook and the other streets is that there is traffic going fast, there are shadows, and they're not platooned because you're kind of far away from any sort of traffic signal or traffic control. So once you find a gap in both directions, there's already another car coming. And the issue with the driveway here and its offset, especially for a right turn coming out of the driveway, they're going to be moving relatively slowly. It's not the same degree of risk compared to a quickly approaching downhill vehicle on Alpine Road. So while I acknowledge that that is a potential risk, I think it's relative risk compared to just the existing traffic, and their speeds on Alpine Road is much greater.
Did that answer your question for now, Karen? Great, thank you. Are there other questions of clarification? Bryna?
Yeah, so I got a question about the trails. I guess those would be for Brian Apple, since there are 2. And it's regarding a couple of public comments about the view shed. And I can't remember all the iterations that we've seen.
Sure.
but I'm wondering if those were referring, if you understood more clearly what the view shed implications were, or whether it was referring to an earlier version.
Yeah, trying to get back to a map. Maybe Ashley can help me out with that. Yeah, I think the comments specifically refer to what we've kind of been calling option 2. If you look at the map that's shown on the screen now, the segments 16 and 17, is that right? Yeah, 16 and 17. So those are the, especially segment 17 aligns through that grassland hill slope there. And that's why you see that kind of dense purple coloration, because if you're looking from the residence down onto the property, that's what they can clearly see, and the darker the purple, the more residents, see that spot on the property. Where it gets lighter, it might be a handful of residents versus like the full 15 that are adjacent to the property. So their comments are, I think specifically segment 17 and to a lesser extent segment 16, cutting across that open grassland slope. So as a resident looking down from their property onto the preserve, that trail cut would be visible, whereas the original purple loop was laid out sort of intentionally to avoid any overlap. But then to be able to provide, some additional opportunities, these two options were developed, kind of based on the feedback from the POG, looking at that opportunity to connect to Sweet Springs Trail, providing for more of that regional interconnection. So again, it's really given sort of the habitat type that we have in that specific area of the preserve, the fact that that's kind of a southwest facing aspect, and so the residences basically look right along that slope there. And again, that purple coloration really represents, how visible that area is from those residences.
Thanks, that makes a lot of sense. It's my bad because I was looking at the legend and the option 2 is white on white, and so I couldn't see it. Thank you.
Sure.
Understanding everything Brian Apple just said, also in earlier meetings, there was some interest in having more than one loop. And so in a way, this alternative provides an additional, not quite loop, but it has some ramifications. And so that's what the PORG will need to weigh up. So are there any other questions of clarifications? Helen, Kerry, Helen.
Benches. Sorry. The benches are shown with icons which really obscure where the bench actually sits and which way the bench faces. And I think the details matter here. For example, if you look at bench B, if it's a little bit out of the purple area and facing away from the houses, it's much less invasive and not necessarily even visible from the houses. Whereas if it's in the purple and facing towards the houses, it's a quite different situation for the people looking from so I think eventually we're going to have to know exactly where those benches go and which way they face. And I don't think we know that yet. So the question is, do you know that?
It is up to you guys. So wherever you want to locate the bench, specifically the location, just like what you said, out of the view shed and facing the town, we can put that into your recommendation for that bench location. And we can do the same thing for other bench locations as well.
So we don't want the one at A to face the Ranger House or whatever.
I think that's something that the PORG will be able to manage.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. Carrie.
I had the same question about bench B, hoping that it wasn't facing the houses. But my other question is, what is a downstream bike pullout?
Yes, I wondered what that was.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Downstream bike pullout. So with these large groups of bicyclists, if they're particularly large, they're going to be going into the vehicle lane, which they are allowed to do. But I have some recent examples in Woodside on Kings Mountain Road. And if you also happen to go by Mount Diablo, these are uphill facilities. So these are people on bike going slowly uphill, and they have constructed a widened asphalt shoulder in order for people on bike to pull off to the side and for people driving to pass them. I threw that out there as a possibility, given the recommendation in the wildfire evacuation study that a widened shoulder would be beneficial for evacuation, that if the town pursued that, then that widened area could be used for people on bike to also pull off to the side and for people driving to pass them. And if there was adequate messaging like bike pull out ahead, perhaps that could assuage some of the conflict, intermodal conflict for people who are driving and feeling impatient for being behind a group of cyclists.
That's it, Carrie? Other questions of clarification? Okay, well, we will certainly be coming back to all of this, but the next thing is a 10-minute break. So I have that it's 10 to 8, 7:51. Let's be back here at 8 if we can. A 9-minute break. Thank you. Thank you, Marie. Reconvening. Welcome back. So now we are into the second public comment period. And before I hand it over to Rachel, I'd just like to say that if you have a card or are planning on making a comment and the person before you says exactly what you were going to say or close enough to what you were going to say, and you're happy with that, just let them say that. There's no need to get up and repeat it unless you've got something different to say. So with that, I'd like to invite co-chair Rachel to open the second public comment period. It's open to the public, both those here in person and those online. And we have both speaker cards in the room and some online speakers. Rachel, thanks.
Are there any members of the public wishing to comment? Please fill out the comment card if you haven't already, and note that you have 3 minutes to share a public comment.
Okay, would you like to start with present or online?
Please, let's start with the people present.
Okay. If Victoria Klein would please come up. And give us 1 moment for us to get the slide up.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, and thank you so very much for being here. And mostly thank you for all of your efforts, lending your time and your expertise to these projects. Appreciate it. I'm Victoria Klein, and I am a longtime resident of Portola Valley Ranch and a even longer equestrian, local equestrian, having my horse at Springdown for 20 years and at Webb for over 20 years now. So over 40 years in the area riding. So I have interests in both categories there. First of all, as an equestrian, I love trail riding, but I'm not an endurance rider. I do other kinds of riding, but I love to get out on short visits. And it's hard if you're not going to go for long distances to get from the parking areas that are now available that have been very much diminished to certain spots, like behind Portola Valley Ranch and at Hawthorns. So I would very much like you to consider combining a couple parking spots so that they would have access to a couple of horse trailer areas at the parking areas. I know that if Mike Bechet has put in a couple of pictures, and we have done some analysis and think it could be possible. So please, I read in December that it was not warranted. I don't know what not warranted means because I very much feel it's warranted. So that's the number one thing. The other very strong concern that I have is about the access between Hawthorns and Sweet Springs Trail. I would love it. I would love to be able to go from Portola Valley Ranch to Hawthorns, but I am very concerned about
the other direction. And we do not allow bikes, as you know, on the trails, on Sweet Spring trails or the other trails at Portola Valley Ranch. And so if bikes are available at Hawthorns, I don't know how it's going to be possible to keep it off. Similarly, I moved to Portola Valley Ranch because I'm a single woman and I very much like the security that it provides. There's only one entrance to Portola Valley Ranch, and that makes me feel very safe. With the idea of hundreds of people on a weekend walking through the neighborhood, that is a big change. I talked to about 10 neighbors in the last couple days. Every one of us has a similar concern about safety and increased activity on the ranch. I would also implore you to look further one more time and confirm for sure that the Sweet Springs Trail is not, in fact, totally a equestrian only dedication and its easement. I know it's on the map as more, but I believe that Charles Maroney does not make things up, and he's a smart man. So please look into that. And I'd rather not have one quick thing. I would love us to consider a Woodside Trail Club.
Thank you. I'm sorry,
access
we are out of time. That's
between Woodside Trail Club access between Hawthorne and the ranch. Thank you very much.
Okay, and just as a quick reminder, if you are virtual, please give your comments to www.openspace.org/public comment. We are not taking comments via raised hand. Thank you very much. And next speaker we have is Diane Garcia.
Okay. Hi, I'm Diane Garcia. I'm a Woodside resident and an avid trail rider, among other horse disciplines. I will try not to overrun, duplicate what Victoria said, but I'd like to urge some consideration of trailer parking in this new open space parking lot. Currently, the access to that area would be Springdown, which is okay sometimes, but if there are a lot of sheriff's cars parked in the building behind, you can't turn your trailer around. You get really stuck, or you end up doing a really tricky 3-point turn. If it's on the weekends during sporting events, forget it. So historically, we had 2 parking places on the Windy Hill parking lot along Portola Valley Road. I don't know if any of you have been in the area long enough to remember that. They're gone. We had parking that was available to us between Rosati's and the soccer fields. On many days, it's impossible to even get a car in there, let alone a horse trailer. We had trailer parking that was allowed on Arrastradero in their parking lot. When they built the bathrooms in the nature center, the horse parking disappeared. So I really appreciate all the other Mid-Peninsula horse parking areas. I would just really like you to encourage, since you're going to allow equestrian access to this open space, to please include a couple of horse trailer parking spots. Not all of us want to ride 2 hours to our destination loop. So, and then 2 hours back home. That's a long ride. And anyway, thank you for listening. I hope you will think about that.
Okay, next is Linda Rawson.
Hi, I'm Linda. Well, I came all the way down here, so I'm going to say something. I'm not going to repeat what Diane said, but that's what I came to say. I just want to reiterate, as an equestrian, I think it's really important to I thought I was talking loud enough. So it's really important that we put some trailer parking spots there, because not everybody can ride their horse from their backyard into the Hawthorns. So if we have trailer parking, we can safely get there, get on our horses. And the future map showed connectivity with the other facilities, which you've heard from Diane, no longer have horse trailer parking. So this would be an ideal center spot down the hill, not way up on, Skyline, to have a place for us to park our trailers and go off and have a beautiful ride in a beautiful area. So I just want to thank you for your consideration for the equestrians. There's a lot of support behind this. And that's why I'm here. And I'm sorry to be redundant, but I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thank you.
And next we have Karen Askey.
Can you hear me? Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the photos. That was really helpful to have those visuals and to see the views and the trails and such. And I am wondering how we can make those public because those weren't in the agenda package, and it would be really great to share all of the new material with the public. I think that helps people stay informed. Now I'm going to speak from the ad hoc committee side, and then you'll get the Karen Askey side. Just to reiterate that we, the ad hoc committee of Portola Valley for Hawthorns, we support multi-use on the trails and dogs on leash. We also support the phased-in parking approach, and we prefer 50 spots in total, but if you're phasing those in, hopefully you won't have to get to 50. We also request that there be story poles put up before the site planning or site visitation, and that they're left up so that everybody can see those and we can see how visible things might be from Alpine Road or what the trail looks like, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Karen Askey hat. I'm not giving up on more options. And one of the thoughts I wanted to share is right turns that might be safer. I've got my safety hat on here. Where you enter on Los Trancos, most traffic will be coming in from Alpine Road on Los Trancos. Turn right. There's an existing fire road on the property by the mansion. Goes in, could use the parking, one of the parking options that are up there. And then it goes through on the main entrance that you've been looking at, but most people will be turning right to exit. So think of it as a loop and you're going on right turns. Again, it goes into the historic complex, but I think we need to look at all alternatives and how they work. I have a few more comments. I just didn't get them all together. The other thing is, and this is actually from the Parks and Rec Committee on which I serve, Portola Valley, you may not believe this, but we have a parking problem these days because of the success of the Alpine Inn, which we love, and people coming to our community to enjoy everything, which we also embrace. But there is a tremendous concern about the parking. So I just wanted to share that everything you think of, make sure that we don't have more parking overflowing onto our streets and creating dangerous situations where bikes are getting clipped, cars are pulling out on each other. We just want to avoid it. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll go ahead and move to virtual. We have Kathy Laporte.
Thank you. I spoke earlier and shared my point of view about option 2 and the really negative impact it would have on the homeowners and the Portola Valley Ranch. And while we've been on the call, I went back and looked at the goals that this group set out several years ago. And one of them very clearly states that protecting the scenic view sheds is part of the aesthetic goal. So I would just really ask and encourage that people remember the original goals and vision here. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Christy Corley.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just finish what I was saying earlier. I would like to support equestrian parking areas, 1 or 2. I think it should be part of this town, and we should respect that. Let's see, looking at number 7 and 8, I feel like we should have just looked at pictures for 1 through 6 again as part of this talk. And I think that's missing. And I do think picture number 8, parking should show Alpine Road in the picture. if you're going to pass these on to others that are making decisions. I was curious why the traffic consultant didn't look at exiting cars from Hillbrook, Golden Oak, because there's a right, left, and straight there, because you go straight into Alpine Swim and Tennis. And then look at Alpine Swim and Tennis entrance and exit, and then Paso del Arroyo. And as we know, Los Trancos Road, often the cars coming down roll out. And there's been many accidents, because I live across the street and I say this a lot. There's accidents with cars and accidents with bikes right at Los Trancos and Alpine Road. And number 8 is very close to that. And we'd run into the same thing where the speed of the bikes is picked up, the speed of the cars is picked up, and now there's an entrance, egress, and ingress. So I'm a little concerned with number 8, entrance and exit. And remember, cars are rolling often. They're not stopping at the stop signs as they should. So I lean towards number 7. But I thought you were going to review 1 through 6 again. So I'll have to go back through those and look. But I am not for number 8's entrance at all. And then I think because it's close to Alpine Road. The trails on the hill, I think the more the better. We can walk. I think we need another trail. So I guess I'm going to say I'm for the second trail. And I'm going to be getting a lot more extra cars. I live on Alpine Road and I'm going to be dealing with that too. There's a lot of gives and takes here that we all will be doing to bring this park into our town. And then I did hear one woman say, can you incorporate bike loop for children? I don't know how that's been taken care of or if you're still considering it, but wanted to bring it up again. And then wildlife fences, are we going to keep that cyclone fence? Are we going to replace it? And are we going to wait to do that? Or can we get a wildlife fence and have that be not as ugly as the cyclone fence, I mean, before the end? And then I encourage this group, the PEG, and the board to get the current.
Thank you. We are out of time on those 3 minutes. We appreciate your thoughts. Are there other online?
Yes, we have 2 further. Ellen Vernassa, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I just had something to say. The gentleman who was talking about the bicyclists and possibly putting in a wider bike lane, or, just to let you know, I live off Alpine Road also, and bicyclists are in no way going to slow down or stop with a car coming out of the entrances on Alpine Road. And as they're going by as fast as they're going to be going by Nathorst and Hillbrook, don't even consider that the bicyclists are going to slow down or stop or be looking for the cars that are coming out from the parking lot. And also, I know the area pretty well on Alpine Road there, and a few big rocks are not going to block the parking stretched all the way across the length of Alpine Road there. They're going to be 50 parking spaces are going to be highly visible from everyone going down Alpine Road there. But I basically really want to say about the bicyclists, don't count on bicyclists acting as they should. They're there for themselves. So that's just another safety factor. Thanks.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Charles Maroney.
Hello. I just wanted to follow up on the question from the board member who asked about the easement. The staff member showed a map of the town trails, which does have Sweet Springs Trail listed as a hiking, dog walking, equestrian trail. That's not what the easement was. There's a difference here. The easement was granted in 1975. I tried to submit it electronically to you guys. You're not accepting my PDFs for some reason, but you can get it from Howard Young at the town. I've gone through it with Howard. He's aware of it. He wasn't sure why they changed the signs a few years ago, but there's been no change to that easement. So technically the easement is equestrian only. And that's since that area was, or that Sweet Springs Trail was put in 75 and meanders around 50 or 60 homes, the whole concept of the trail was to be a fairly lightly used trail. So there was never a thought that there was going to be a 50-car parking lot there feeding that particular trail. So I think the easement is what's important here, not what the town has morphed to, because the legal document is the easement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have no further public comments.
Thank you, Marie. And thank you all for your comments too. So now we are into the moment where we have PORG discussion and recommendations. So we're going to focus first on PORG discussion. And as we get into this, the first half or so, perhaps 2/3, be great if we could focus on trail uses and alignment. In previous conversations, we've talked a lot about parking, and we can get to that too, and focus on parking and entries. But I think if we could touch on first the trail alignment and the kinds of users in the preserve. I would like to start by just touching on some things here, because I think tonight we're going to get to expressions of preference. And obviously there's a sizable group here, and we're looking for some common ground and what refinements might be done to achieve a greater level of common ground. And so I'm going to go through this gradients of agreement. It's really for informal voting that I'm focusing on tonight, but we may also get to official voting. So the purpose of this is that it's a mechanism really for testing the level of agreement we have. Shall I sit down? Time's up. Should I sit down?
Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. I didn't realize this thing. It should not have been still on. Well, liven up the group.
No problem. So returning to this, it's really, it's an opportunity on the gradients of agreement to find out how much common ground there is on particular topics. And then if there isn't a comprehensive level of common ground, to find out what it would take to, sometimes it's relatively fine-tuning changes, sometimes it's more than that. And so the values from 1 to 4 of the gradients are really, they're forms of consideration of agreement with the general policy in various levels, or the topic at hand. The full consensus is reached if all members of the PORG vote 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so you each have on your table a stack of 6 sheets of paper clipped together that represent those levels of agreement. There are colors too, so we've got color coding to make it a little simpler. And if we go through perhaps up to 3 rounds of informal voting before we get to the official vote, that may work, but we will need to see how we go tonight. We're looking for establishing as much common ground as possible, and so we can identify the areas that may need additional work. So just to go through the 6 levels, the first is to say, yes, I'm unqualified in my agreement with this. The second is that I find the proposal acceptable, and that it's probably the best thing for the current, for the options that are available to us. The third one is I may not be especially enthusiastic about it, but I can live with it. The fourth is that you may not fully agree with the proposal, but you're willing to stand aside and remain neutral so that the process can move forward. Those are the first 4. And then the next 2 are level 5. I don't fully agree with the proposal and have some suggestions that I'd like the working group to do more work to see if we can get to a higher level of agreement. And the last one is I don't agree and I'll actively oppose it. And so, you know, obviously there's a lot on the table and there's going to be differing points of view. We've all been very civil and we're looking forward to continuing in that vein, but we're looking for a constructive way forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it to the chair, Rachel, to start voting on some of the topics. Trail alignment and uses is the first thing. And the trail alignment is shown here. So, are you okay with that? What issues do you have? And then let's talk about trail uses after that. Rachel.
Okay. So, first, are there any thoughts about trail uses that anybody wants to? Sorry. Are there any thoughts that people would like to start by sharing? Because
Maybe just a clarifying question. So are we talking about now the purple trail, the conceptual loop trail? Or are we talking about, the other segments that are proposed for linking, outside, or all of that?
Yeah, in a way, all of that, but we can pick it off, piece by piece. Each segment of the trail has a number.
Yes.
So we can all be talking about the same things. They may be a little bit hard to read, but we can get confirmation from others in the room. And
for looking at it as an overview, I can see that 1 through 9 cover the original loop trail. 10 is the connector in the top right of the screen. 11, 12, and 13 pertain to locations where benches are being considered. 14 is a connector into the Alpine Trail. 15, 16, and 17 look to be all kind of connectors into Sweet Springs. Does that seem like an accurate summation? I'm looking at the Mid-Penn people to confirm. So
I was just going to suggest, can we start with like the easier to the harder?
Yes.
So we get consensus on the basic loop trail. Do we like the basic loop trail?
Well, I think one thing we should also be looking at is the uses as well, because while we may all like the trail, we also want to acknowledge the uses that may be happening on the trail, and it is possible that a section of trail might be better for separate uses. And so recognizing, for example, if we've talked about how the Sweet Springs Trail may only be equestrian only, so putting mountain bike access in that section may not be a logical approach. So I think we need to also look at not just, I agree with the evaluation of looking at easier to harder, but I also think each of the use cases needs to also be considered within those areas.
If I could share something that I learned over the years working in this business, it's really hard to enforce a variety of different uses within a preserve. Probably one that is possible would be like a dog on leash loop, but that's still difficult for the visitors to understand while they're out there having to make that decision about how to navigate the preserve. So to me, it's an all or nothing with these uses, with the exception of some of the perimeter trails that are really town trails, and those are, so the distinction between the Mid-Penn trails versus the town trails, I think we should look at that maybe differently, but I don't know if other people want to discuss that, but that would be my 10 cents, is that it's really difficult to enforce any kind of variety of uses within a small property like this.
I agree with you, Sandy. I've seen cases where it's been divided and people just go ahead and do what they want to do if it's small enough, and I think that this is just too small to do a segmentation.
I have a question about the easement. About the easement. Is someone going to be looking into that, or is that something that we have to care about? I mean, if it's a legal document, but I know that sometimes, like you were saying, the limitations on easement to Sweet Springs Trail just being equestrian only versus multi-use, which I guess is what it's morphed into, and sometimes I know common use can override an easement, you know, but I mean, if it is equestrian only and we're talking about this common use of all the trails, I think that comes into play. So it's important that we understand what the limitation is on the Sweet Springs Trail.
Could someone on the Mid-Penn staff clarify whether that is something or how that will be?
Yeah, so the only information we have and publicly available is that town's map that I think we talked about in the past. And on that map, it shows it is multi-use, and it is up to the town to you know, to decide how they enforce the uses in addition to equestrian use.
Can I? Because one of the commenters said that there is a document though, and
I have used that trail for maybe 50 years, 45 years at least. I think the issue that we need to be concerned about is the landowners can try to go back to the original easement, but it has been used as a pedestrian, equestrian, and dogs on leash trail for at least 45 years.
If I may, Rachel, I was the one who opened the can of worms about alignment, but I think actually you were quite right to go to uses. And I think Sandy's also correct that we should look at the things that we can pick off one by one. So perhaps we should look at trails as to the trails on the map that's shown right now. Are they all suitable for hiking? Are they all suitable for equestrian, dogs on leash, mountain biking? Or is some selection of them suitable for those uses? But pick off those things one at a time, perhaps.
All right, well, let's start with just the hiking. Does anybody have any thoughts on hiking?
Well, I would just say that I think that the 1 through 9, yeah. Who's got a vote?
If we're looking at 1 through 9, it sounds like we are ready to take a quick vote in terms of hiking. Is that so? That is fabulous. We are all consistently in agreement on hiking. Number 2, continuing on the 1 through 9 vein for equestrian use.
When you say 1 through 9, you're referring.
I'm referring to the loop on there, the ones that are segments 1 through 9.
Could we just make sure that we're all talking about the same thing?
Yes.
So we're talking about equestrian use on the trails. We're not talking about whether there's equestrian parking.
Correct.
That's right.
We
Okay.
are specifically talking about trails at this time and not any of the parking options in terms of our
Can we
recommendations.
keep up the 2 to 5? No, oh, it's on the bottom. Sorry.
So Rachel, what was that?
And if you're looking at your questions there, they do say on the bottom.
So just to paraphrase, you were just saying that what is the interest level in trail segments 1 through 9 to be used for equestrian use?
Correct. So we're seeing general agreement on but 1s and 2s. Did you get
We
what you
did.
needed, Mid-Penn people?
Yeah,
Here for the notes?
I think we've got it. We've got it down. We're recording it up here.
Okay.
We got 4 2s. The rest were 1s for equestrian use on trail segments 1 through 9.
In the same loop, still focusing specifically on usage, not anything on parking, dogs on leash.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And and then same set of circumstances, but mountain bikes. So sections 1 through 9, focusing on trail use only for mountain bikes. No parking concerns factored in at this time, just the loop on 1 through 9. Well, yes. Yes, absolutely.
My question is for the trail designers. And that is, segment 9 seems to me to be steep and switchbacks. And the question is that trail suitable for mountain bike use? Just that segment. Can be made.
Looking sort of agency-wide, district-wide at trails, we have very similar trail layout where mountain biking is consistent with a trail layout like that. I think the only thing to really consider is that this is a smaller trail network, and you know, to introduce bikes here could create some challenges, but as far as sort of construction techniques, sustainability of the trail, that particular layout could accommodate mountain bike use.
Thank you.
Rachel, I think one thing that, before we move on to just kind of like the concept of mountain bikes, we need to think about, because connecting a trail that allows mountain bike use to a trail that does not allow mountain bike use becomes problematic. It actually affects the trail network as well as just whether the use is permitted or not. So my vote would be different if we were talking about an internal loop system that didn't connect into any other points, as compared to the plan, you know, that we're seeing in front of us. So it's sort of hard to vote on this.
Well, I mean, I'd like to comment on that, because at Arastradero Preserve, I agree with your comment that it's better to have the whole preserve and the connections all be the same uses and not have discontinuity of that. But for example, in Portola Valley, they have the exact same trail system, and there's like dogs on this trail and not dogs on that trail. And they have good signage for that, and they have a good rationale for that. Part of it's considered a preserve and part of it's considered open space. And so I think when we're looking at the loops, we probably want to be very careful about not putting bikes on trail segment 15, for example, but having bikes on trail segment 14 so that they can connect back onto the road and go further along from their bikes would make sense. And I think you can get good buy-in, and maybe the Midpen staff can weigh in on that. With the proper signage, you can have, you know, those kind of mixed uses and let people, you know, go through. And you're going to have some people that don't obey that, but 90% of the people do.
There's other methods, you know, the swing gate, sort of equestrian gate type of approach. I know that is one frequently done at Arastradero as one of the approaches. Arastradero also has switchbacks like this that are exactly like this, and it's regularly used by the mountain bikes. But I did want to bring up that the trail network and the use are interconnected, and we may, particularly with mountain bikes, we probably shouldn't look at that as just a freestanding thing.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick comment on Windy Hill. They've got both uses going there, and I don't think it's a big enforcement problem, but I defer to Chris over there. I'm sorry?
Can you speak into your microphone?
My microphone's on. Yeah, I was just commenting on Windy Hill because both types of trails exist there, and I think Chris is going to have a comment here on how well that's working.
Overall, very well. We have bikes on the main Spring Ridge Trail, and then a connection over to the picnic area and restroom. And then we have dogs allowed on Hams Gulch and Lost Trail north of Hams Gulch and Spring Ridge and Anniversary, but not on Razorback or south of Hams Gulch. Generally, compliance is pretty good, and especially with the bikes. We don't have a lot of, whoops, sorry. We don't have a lot of non-compliance with bikes. And dogs, we do get some, you know, out there, and that just becomes a management issue for the rangers to enforce. There are signage and some structural things you can do definitely when bikes are in one place and not in the next, no barriers. We don't want barriers, but very prominent visual, like a style that you would walk through, with signage very prominent so that it's clear. And in a smaller preserve like this, smaller trail network, I think it would operate a little bit differently than the larger network at Windy Hill. I think it could be done. Definitely the connection along Alpine Road and the connection back down to Alpine Trail at Portola Road for bikes for the route to school makes a lot of sense, and I think would be pretty easily done. If we wanted to close the rest of that loop to bikes, I think it could be done because there's only kind of 2 points to do that. And once you're on that loop, you know, you're a sitting duck for a ranger. That's just kind of how it is. Whereas in Windy Hill, that's a much larger area, so it's harder to patrol.
I wanted to make a comment in terms of Coal Mine Ridge, which is part of the Portola Valley Trail Network, but it's actually part of the ranch. There is one trail there that I don't know historically when this happened, but Toyon Trail does have gates to stop people from biking on there. And that was built because it's a nice single track trail that I could see why bicyclists would enjoy more. So I would think that particularly for considering the connection to Sweet Springs and opening that up, that probably somebody, maybe it's us, maybe it'd be the ranch, if that would happen, that we would have to put a physical gate barrier for bikes if we are deciding to go with bikes. And there is a fair amount of dogs on Coal Mine Ridge that are unleashed also.
Rachel, I wonder if I could add something that may be relevant here. It's come up in previous meetings and it came up, I think, a little earlier tonight about the potential for a nice place for kids to ride. And I think there's a lot of sort of feeling for that to be supported. The thing with a trail with kids' bikes on it, you can't police that. It's either bikes, all bikes, of which kids may be some of them, or no bikes, I think. So I just wanted to clarify that, you can't really have a kids-only bike trail.
Thank you for that clarification. Scott, you might have.
You know, actually, I'm just going to build on that comment. I wanted to remind people that I think we've heard a lot of public comments in support of mountain bike area for kids. I think this is a small enough preserve that what I'll call the avid adult mountain biker is not going to seek out this. They're going to focus on other areas like Windy Hill. And therefore, I think this is an incredible opportunity to offer a smaller, great space for young mountain bike riders. So I certainly am very supportive. And I understand that if you open up to kids, it means all mountain bikers. And so because of, I think the way it's going to be used, I certainly would very much encourage that mountain bike across the board.
Well, I'll point out one of my concerns about it is that mountain biking can be very destructive to the environment around. And so I'm very supportive of the idea of an opportunity for children to be able to practice and grow as mountain bikers. But I'm also concerned about in a property, especially a property this small, what that would do to the environment from an environmental perspective, some of those habitats, and just what will happen all around it. So think about the environmental concerns as well. Yeah.
Well, isn't a lot of that have to do with trail design and how well the trails are built and are they properly graveled? I mean, if you get a lot of muddy runoff because a trail runs through a creek, and that's a big problem, but with good trail design, I submit that a lot of those problems can be mitigated.
If you're thinking about children, I will speak as an educator for a moment. There needs to be education and teaching people how to use it properly, and especially if you're thinking about it as your target group that are predominantly going to be using it as younger people. They're still learning how to use the trails, how to use that environment. And while we certainly hope that families are going to be teaching their children how to use a trail well, we can't guarantee that that's going to happen. And you can get it if you get distracted. Here's they're pulling up the nature one and look at all the those are the wood rat nests, right? That are the diamonds. And I can tell you that from my time in the classroom, the students would definitely out in nature be like, oh, look, that's really cool, and want to go and investigate and learn more about and see what they're seeing in that space, particularly if they have an easy mode to get much closer and then try to move further away faster if an animal were to come out.
You're worried that the kids are going to ride off trails and go over the wood rat nests?
One of our letters that came in, it was a guy that lived in San Ramon. He gave a very compelling argument against bikes. So go to one of our letters that we received. It goes a lot faster than humans. It scares animals for greater distances. It comes up on them abruptly.
I wonder
try
if
to
I,
disappear.
in the interest of, we were making a nice bit of headway a moment ago. If we can do one of two things, and Rachel, it's up to you, I think, to decide the next step. But one would be to look at, we found good common ground on hiking, equestrian, and dogs on leash for trail segments 1 through 9. There are a number of other segments. Maybe we could take it through all of the segments on those 3 uses, come back to bikes, and then also look at each of the segments for the question of bikes as well. Is that a suggestion?
That seems reasonable, given that there seems to be more consistent agreement and for it. So in that vein, let's see. Can we?
Might I make a suggestion? It seems like it might make sense to take the spurs one by one, but we could probably do the main loop all at once.
So when you say the main
So the 1
loop, are
through
you?
9, well, what is
We just
that?
did 1 through 9.
On the subject of
Yeah.
bicycles, do
I
the
think-
1 through 9 and then do the spurs one by one.
I think. Yeah.
Could I suggest 1, 2, 3 separately for bikes first? Because that's what, if I'm looking correctly, that's the part, that we had talked about along the road.
1, 2, 4.
Or one, yeah.
1, 2, 14, and 10.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, so what I'm hearing is that we think there might be some common ground in terms of bicycles on sections 1, 2, 10, and 14.
I guess are we actually voting on this? Okay.
Soft voting.
Well, if they want to talk, if
Just-
you have something you want to share, please. do.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Sandy's thoughts earlier that we either do it all or nothing, and either do the loop or I don't see the benefit of adding just a small part if you're going to vote no on the rest of it.
All right. So what
I'd struggle with that.
What I'm hearing is I feel like our goal for the moment is to try to get some spots where we have agreement. It sounds like further discussion is warranted on the topic of mountain bikes and bikes in general. So let's put a pin in the bikes and we will circle back to hiking. And we'll go the hiking, the equestrian, and the dogs for those options, looking at some of the other trails. Given where things connect in, I'm going to suggest that we look at 10 and 14. Those are the 2 kind of access points to the Alpine Road and the Alpine Trail. Is it to group those together? So when we talk about them, so for hiking on 10 and 14, we have one. I see one's across for the note taker. Then we said equestrian is the second one for 10 and 14.
Can you raise them up, please? And turn them around so we can see them too. For 3 2s and a 4.
The reason I'm voting this way is because I think 10 is great, but I think if 14, if we were going to allow, get back to the bikes, that it would make more sense to do 10 and 15 for equestrians because there's no issue with equestrians going on to Sweet Spring. But there may be an issue with equestrians going on there and keep the bikes and the equestrians separate on 14.
So if we separate out those for a moment, then what would change in terms of?
I'm all in favor of 10 and I'm in favor of 15 for equestrians, but I'm not particularly fond of 14 for
All
equestrians.
right, so if we could take a moment then, if we were to separate out that vote, if we were just looking at 10 for a moment on the equestrian front.
Thank you.
And then going back to 14 individually, then that one goes back to a consistently. Let's go ahead and just to clarify then for the 14 individually. So we can have on the
For
same page.
equestrian.
For equestrian still, sorry. That way it's broken down.
1, 4, 2 twos, 3 twos.
And then 10 and 14 together again for dogs on leash.
Can I see you? Thank you. 1, 3. And the rest are ones.
And then we have this 11, 12, and 13 are on the loop trail still. There are separate spurs, but to the spots where benches are currently proposed. And so going back to first, are there any differing opinions or is it okay to group all of
Group
those
them.
spurs given that they're on the loop?
Group them.
Okay, so we are going to group 11, 12, and 13 for hiking.
Thank you.
All right. 11, 12, and 13 for equestrian.
Two twos. Thank you.
And then 11, 12, and 13 for dogs.
On leash.
On leash, sorry, yes. Every time I say for dogs, I do mean on leash.
2 twos. Great. Thank you.
All right. So 15, 16, and 17, we'd like to look at individually. And I want to acknowledge that these are ones that were higher points of contention. So I don't want to just jump to any kind of voting. I do want to make sure that if there's a chance for thoughts to be heard, particularly, we will take them individually. So if you've got thoughts to share on them, so let's just take them in numeric order. 15, are there any thoughts that, yes.
Well, and this comment applies to the others as well.
Please speak into your microphone.
Okay, this comment applies to the others as well. I don't really care. It seems to me that if the people of Portola Valley Ranch want to have access to this trail network, it would behoove them to want to see these trails open. And, you know, if they want to shut them down, the public can't come through, which is what they talk about. But, you know, it's a two-way street. If the people in the ranch want to have access to the Hawthorns, they need to let the public use the trails. So it's kind of up to them.
There are people in the ranch on either side of this argument. There are people everywhere. But the Town Trails Committee asked for these connections. So that's more than just the ranch. The people who are concerned about the visibility issues are the ones that don't want the connection, and some concern about the number of people on Sweet Springs Trail. But the town's Trails Committee does ask for trails whenever development happens on any property in this area. And it's very common that the people who will see that trail don't want it, and everybody else in the town does want it. So.
And I believe the Town Trails Committee also recognized all uses as well for all of these spurs. So I do want to acknowledge where that's coming from.
And they're on the general plan.
I think something we haven't mentioned yet is that 16 and 17 seem to be important connections for the interconnectivity of other trail systems and accessing other preserves. Most of these other connections only go along Alpine Road and Alpine Trail. And so to get to those back preserves of Coal Creek and Los Trancos, I think that 16 and 17 would be really crucial in being able to get back over there.
I had kind of more of a question. Can we do 16? It looks like it impacts the view shed less and not do 17. Would that be a realistic option?
That is an option.
Okay.
And it seems to me like 15 and 16 are rather redundant because they both end up on Sweet Springs. So do you really need two connections to that one trail? One's just a very short connection.
Depends which direction you're coming from. To make the comment, to respond to the previous comment, if I may,
Into the microphone.
the connection to other preserves is given by going along Alpine Trail, which turns and goes up Alpine Road and goes to Windy Hill. So I think the likelihood that somebody, say from this parking lot, wanting to connect to the other preserves would go Alpine Trail is higher than that they would go Sweet Springs, which is a kind of devious way through.
I was more referring to the kind of Coal Creek, Foothills Nature Preserve kind of direction, and to go along Alpine Road would be a really redundant or a long way around. So I imagine people wanting to go through that kind of back way.
That would be the future connection of the Los Trancos Trail and the Valley Oak Trail. It would be the critical one there.
I kind of want to support what Tyler's saying a little bit because, especially on the weekends, the Portola Valley is packed with hikers, and there are some clever ways you can go through town to kind of avoid the crowds. Honestly, on some of the more popular trails, so Sweet Springs does connect out back into. You kind of go through the ranch a little bit, but then you can go out to some other trails. So I kind of like the idea of more connections.
I wanted to follow up with what Tyler said, because maybe I'm missing what your point was, but were you saying that in your mind, 16 and 17 enabled a greater connection to the, I guess that would be east across the Santa Clara, San Mateo County line towards Foothill, Rastadero? So 16 and 17, because that just connects to Sweet Springs, you would actually need the historic area development to alter what you were.
I'm more referring to not so much Rastadero, but the back side of Foothills Nature Preserve.
There's no trail there.
Except that has no public connection right now, and it's way off in the future.
You can connect into Coal Mine Ridge through the ranch, but there's no back end way into into Foothill at all off of Los Trancos.
No public access point at all because it has not been secured yet. So, okay, that helped me. Thanks.
So maybe another.
If I could add one more thing, it seems to me that we would really, if we're going to make a connection to Saddleback Trail, we really only need one connection instead of two because they're so close together. And it does raise the.
You mean Sweet Spring?
Sorry, Sweet Spring.
And Saddleback's the road.
Saddleback Drive. Okay, that's what got me thrown off. Yeah, Sweet Springs Trail. We really only need one connection. Would make it a lot easier to manage and such.
Could I ask a question of our trail building expert? So 17 goes like right through the heart of the purple, right? And I just think that that's problematic. I might not agree with that viewpoint, but could we take 17 and instead take the bench 12 and the bench B and stay outside of the purple and then connect to 16. So we have another sort of internal loop, but that avoids, the view shed issue. And then we could, so realign 17 and then we could keep 16 and then eliminate 15 because it's redundant to go to the same trail.
I don't think we can design it on the spot.
Yeah, so there could be other options to make the connection through the higher visibility area to ensure that we're maintaining sustainable alignment. However, we could be extending the length of the trail, which could result in potentially greater impacts. Generally, one of the things when we're building trail in grassland and we're having to reduce, drop elevation, we want to avoid doing like any of our climbing turns as much as we can or switchbacks in the grassland. And so basically the alignment that's shown here was sort of the most sustainable opportunity to then also link to the Sweet Springs Trail. So the alignments could be configured differently and still kind of achieve the desired gradient, but you might have to draw out the length of the trail. So that would be something we'd have to kind of further explore to see if we could possibly achieve that.
If we went from here, like along this and reconnected there, the shorter trail, staying out of the view shed, it gets a little bit more of an internal loop.
So yeah, basically we would just have to over steepen the trail, which could result in either a greater increased maintenance regime or potential more adverse impacts to the surrounding environment. So there'd be a bit of a trade-off. Again, we're trying to target that sort of 8 to 10% trail running grade to ensure that we have a sustainable trail.
It's not a very high grade.
Sorry.
Not very many contour lines on the map I have here.
It could be, something we could evaluate, but basically, again, what we're looking at here would be, sort of the most ideal layout from a sustainability standpoint.
Okay.
The other thing about less steep trails is it does avoid the use conflicts like especially with cycling. It's on. I just was looking over at everybody else. What I was going to say that the less steep trails avoid the use conflicts between the different user types. Going downhill, you're not going as fast.
I just wanted to comment, the reason to have, say, both trails 16 and 15 is the section of Sweet Springs Trail between where those two trails take off is extremely steep and not good trail. And so by giving people the option to avoid it from either direction would be an advantage of having those two connections. I agree that one could avoid Trail 17, but that then cuts out an internal loop.
Suggestions, Rachel?
I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to put a pin in 15, 16, and 17 since our next meeting would be on site and give us a chance to look around and make a fully or a more informed decision so we can be thoughtful both from the recommendations of Portola Valley and the needs and how it all fits together, but also considerations for the view shed and the good neighbor policy and just how it all fits together.
I think we could.
We vote. This is just this is just a straw poll, right?
Yep.
Right.
If we vote to see how much we do or don't agree about each of those segments separately.
Fair enough.
And we
Yeah,
have the poll.
I would agree with that as well.
All right.
And I think also coming back to mountain bikes, I'd want to get at least a sense of,
A
where we
sense
are
of-
today.
Of where we all are.
Absolutely. This is not a non-binding vote, is my
This is not a
That is
vote.
correct.
thought,
All
right?
right. So in that vein, then, based on the discussions we've had, why don't we start with, we'll go 15, 16, 17 individually for hiking, equestrian dogs as a straw poll, and then we'll circle back around to mountain bikes with an eye towards just understanding where we are currently at. So starting then 15 on hiking.
12 ones.
All right, so, and then
15.
15 on equestrian.
12 ones. Yep. Oh, 1, 2. Excuse me. Thank you.
And then 15 dogs on leash.
2 2s.
And then 16 hiking.
All ones.
No, 1 2. Oh, 2 2s.
Excuse me, 2 2s. Thank you. Mhm.
16 equestrian.
One, 2, 3 2s.
And 16 dogs on leash.
1, 2, 3, 4 2s.
All right, 17. And following that same path, where are we in terms of hiking?
3 ones. Please hold that for 1 moment.
3 5. 3 4. 1 3. 2 2. 1 3 1. Oh no. 3 1.
I got it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
17 equestrian use. I think it's the same numbers as the previous one.
Is everyone the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
And same with
Thank you.
dogs.
And then dogs on that same trail.
Same number.
Yeah.
Is anyone
So
different
for
on the
17 on
dogs?
all uses,
Okay.
it's for all uses in terms of equestrian, hiking, and dogs are all the same.
Okay. Thank you. That was an accomplishment. Thank you all.
And then we said we did want to touch on getting that straw
We
poll
absolutely
for,
do. But I just wanted to acknowledge that I think we actually got through quite a bit there. So let's talk about bicycling, and if there's a will, perhaps also a little bit on alignment. But let's do bicycling first, and maybe segment by segment.
I was going to suggest that 1 and 2 could be grouped, and then 14, 1, because 1, 2, 14, and is that 10? Sorry, it's scrolled a little bit, so I can't quite see that segment.
10.
Yes, 10 is the one in the top right corner.
Can I suggest we do that backwards? Can I suggest we do that backwards? And we do the larger part of the loop first?
Okay.
Because if there's a consensus there, then the other answer is easier.
Fair enough. All right, so by that, we are doing segments 3 through 9.
2, 3,
Sorry,
2 through 9.
3 through 9. 3 is the one to the left of 14 on the map and sort of the outside part of the loop.
You wouldn't include 2 to complete the loop?
No, we're gonna. Yeah.
Well, the idea was,
Well, by that, then it'd be the whole loop. One, yeah.
An alternative approach would be to
Yeah.
start on the outside and move in. Your choice. 3 through 9, is that where we are?
would you like to say? I'm sure it's valuable to all of us.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the segmenting. I think it should be an all or nothing. So if we do the more difficult part first and have a conclusion there, then it might be easier to answer the perhaps
You
easier
want-
question.
Would you like to formulate that for a moment there, Karen? What do you mean by that?
The loop at large. So
So you want
everything.
1 through 9?
Um,
2 through 9.
I would vote differently on 1 and 2 than I would for the rest. So if you do the whole loop, you're gonna lose that piece of information. Because I'm for letting, say, like kids, use the part along Alpine. And that is part of the loop, and you can't capture that if you're doing the entire loop.
I see. You mean 1, 2, and 3? Or
Yes,
1,
because
2, and
1 and
14?
Well, 1,
'Cause-
2, 14, and 10, I think
1,
that was
2,
what
10,
we
and
had.
14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because 1, 2, 14, and 10 could be added as a connector to Alpine. And so that could be a loop of its own, whereas 3 through 9 is part of the loop internally. So that's why
maybe start with, how many people are concerned with having part of the trails, one use and part of the trails another use?
Just vote.
I think
Whatever you want to do.
Straw poll, we're not attached to anything. Why don't we get the evaluation and we'll move forward? So 3 through 9, how do you feel about biking on segments 3 through 9?
What have you got going there, Karen? Okay, great. Thank you.
2.5.
2, 3. One, 2.
I missed the 4s and 5s. So 1, 2 4s and a 5.
Did you get all of?
Yep, we did. Thank
Okay.
you. Now go with it.
Okay, so I am going to move on to 1 and 2, and I'm going to do those separately from 10 and 14, just to kind of make it clear where things stand. So 1 and 2, mountain biking. Or biking. And then 10 and 14, biking. And the 10 and 14 are the same as 1 and 2.
So 1, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, continuing on that biking, 11, 12, and 13 are the Vista spurs. And so how are we feeling on that one?
Is that the same as what?
No, I changed.
Nope, that's a change. Okay.
So 1, 5.
I got the ones to do, which is really thinking.
2, 2, 2. 1, 2, 1, 3, 2. The rest are 1.
Which is 1, 2, 3.
So
What was
the
yours,
one-
Karen?
Put the 1, hold your number up.
If you voted,
Just
still,
1, 2, 3, 4s. Thank you.
if you
There's 5 ones.
for 11, 12, and 13, if you voted 1, please hold it up so they can make sure to record it.
Yep, 5 ones. Got it. Thank you.
And then 15 on biking. One is connecting in. That one is the.
So we've got. Does
No,
everyone
not
have a
everyone
number
has up for 15.
If you're not holding a number up, I wonder if you would. I'll go with what you say. Thank you. Well, the thing is, it's connecting to a trail, which is a no bike trail. Oh, yeah. 2, 2, 1, 1. You could bike up Saddleback. No threes.
All right,
Seven,
16 in terms of, sorry,
On that last one, please hold your.
15, please. For 15, please raise your cards again.
There's a 4? Yeah. Thank you.
All right. And 16 for biking.
One, 2, 2, 1. Thank you.
And then 17 biking. Was that this? Did anybody vote differently for 16 versus 17?
Yes.
Okay, there are differences on 16 versus 17, sorry.
1, 4. 1, 2. And 2, 1. Thank you.
All right, I do want to say thank you to everybody. We have a fabulous starting point in terms of usage, and I think it's really great that for some of these, we have really great agreement across the board, and for others, we do have some consistency still that'll make for a great continuing conversation. What was the
So
next
we've done well on uses. I would say the next topic is trail alignment. I will acknowledge that it's 9:15 and we could keep going for a little bit. I do feel like we've got some momentum, but at your pleasure. Shall we keep going for a bit?
Hi.
What was that meaning, David? Keep it going. Okay, great. So let's talk briefly about alignment. We do have a loop road and some connections. I think there was some conversation. Yeah, Bryna.
I just want to say that I do have a hard stop at 9:30, so.
Okay, thank you. In that case, Ashley, I know we've got some other items, business items to deal with. Should we do this for, it's almost 9:20, so is it a wrap?
Yeah, we probably, well, we can.
Unless we
continue
can make sure that Vivian knows the schedule, because it's really the schedule is and homework assignments and the site meeting. Okay.
I'll have to do that. Maybe we can come back to it. Gets you out of voting.
I guess we're going to come back to this at the 6th meeting in June, pick up where we left off. I think we now know the process, though. It seems to work pretty well. And it looks like we should probably move on. Can we get to a good slide? Thank you. Thank you for that.
So we're
Yeah.
mumbling over here, and I just wanted to say that we think that if, in terms of the schedule and next steps, we think that we can pass it on to her. later.
Yeah, we can. I'm just thinking, okay, well, in that grounds, if we can convey that to you, we can keep going. And if you need to slip out, Vivian, so be it. Does that work for all? All right, so maybe we should stay with trail alignment. So a trail alignment has been identified. There's been some conversation on that topic. Let's look for the common ground and see what all is great as it stands. Do you want to peel a piece off, Rachel? Or did we do
I think there's some confusion from.
Well, there's actual trail alignment and then there's uses. We just did uses on all of the trail alignments, but we didn't do the actual placement of the trail alignment.
But isn't the map laying out the trail alignment?
It is, but
that's
there
not-
was a little bit of discussion a moment ago, so.
There was a discussion
Oh,
about
yeah.
replacing 17 by a small other
Okay.
way of making
Yep.
the loop.
That's
the only alignment question that's been raised.
I think if I can sum up what I think I've heard from the group, I think most of in terms of the trail locations there, everything that received all ones is 100% pretty much happy with. And the points of contention were 15, 16, and 17 bear further discussion in terms of placement. I don't think there was any disagreement on 1 through 14 in terms of them being built. Is that correct?
Okay.
And
There is the,
it is true that this is still a conceptual map.
it is.
The map will, for example, if the parking is at, if between option 7 and option 8, there are different options for trail segment 9. Depending where the parking is.
I think that whatever
And
happens, there,
that
there's
will
going to
be
be some
worked out
accommodation.
afterwards,
Yes.
after we've decided
Yes.
parking.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of the finding consensus on items and thinking of alignment and uses. Since we did touch briefly on the bench locations, do you want to have a go at that one? Because I think we can accomplish that. There was a comment earlier about bench locations and identifying orientation. Perhaps we can do that at the same time.
All right, so if we take our first conversation in terms of the spurs, meaning the path to those places, this would be looking at actually placing a bench in those locations versus just having a trail to a vista point where you can stop and look. And so I don't see any reason not to take them as A, B, C in that order. So A is the one furthest to the right off of spur 11. And in terms of, let's start with your stance on placing a bench there. So this one would be a, where do you, or how do you feel about a bench? All right.
Thank you.
And then just to make sure orientation, are there any thoughts?
Facing west. Facing east, I'm sorry.
Facing east.
Facing east. East, northeast.
The direction that the picture showed.
Yeah, can you
aligned
put the
with-
pictures back up?
Looking across the bay.
Could we put the pictures back up,
can you put it
please?
there?
Yeah, so that would be northeast.
East, northeast.
Don't we want all benches to face the view?
I think it's just fine.
Generally, yes.
Okay.
When this view's 360 degrees, you still have to decide an orientation.
So A, this is the direction of the view that we are talking about. Is that when,
Across the bay, across the bay.
yeah. So when we said that, okay, so just, yeah, so A in alignment with the direction of the picture shown in slide 14 was all the same as the initial. And just a quick clarification in terms of locations, because there's B and C, and I know one we were able to stand on. Is B or C the location that we were able to stand on when we visited the site previously?
B.
Okay. So B is the place you stood. C, we were not able to stand. So just take that as you're thinking about these locations. So location B, and again, I think we're assuming the direction of this picture. Nope, nope.
What is unique about this location is the view to the north towards San Francisco. Right, you see Windy Hill from lots of places around, but the view towards the city and this hill, I think is special. So I would make it a little to the north, angled so you can both see Windy Hill and see San Francisco, but not
Looking up the valley, up the fault line. Yeah, yeah, I
up
agree.
the valley of the fault line.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Helen, I'm confused. We're talking about B
We're talking about B.
and we're looking over C to the north?
The picture on B shows looking west to Windy Hill. If you look more northwest, along the San Andreas Fault direction. You've got an extensive view. You can see parts of San Francisco. You can see bridges on the bay and Windy Hill.
Isn't that better from sea?
No, C's lower down.
Okay, I think I need to
need to be
visit
on
to
the side.
field.
Option bench B is on a higher elevation and you actually look over the location for bench C if you're looking generally northwest.
Right.
We can see it next time we're meeting on site.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So,
Just since we're trying to get a good straw poll for where this is at, I recognize that some people may not quite recall the placement. And so this is something to make sure that we take a look at when we're on, when we visit the site in March. But from what you do remember, and you've got an approximation of kind of where it looks, although the suggestion seems to be a different direction. So just for now, thinking about having a bench in that spot, looking out in different.
1, 2. The rest ones. Thank you. And it looking, do you want to do the same vote for it looking north up the fault line? Or that was it?
I think that we can't fully, I think there was
Oh, you
enough
wanna check and
confusion
check.
about where it is to that we want to put a pin in the direction until the next.
can I add another rider there? On the location, it should be located just out of the purple. So it's a little bit down, so it cannot be, the bench itself cannot be seen from the houses. That's just a recommendation. Yep.
So we are in agreement of a bench in location B, but the precise placement pending taking a
Needs
closer
looking at
look
in the field.
in the field. And so I think that bears further discussion in the future. So then location C, which is down the hill, and we have not been able to stand where that is. How are we feeling about that?
1, 5, 1, 2, and 10 ones. Okay, thank you. You want to do the same with the orientation of C, do it on site, or?
I think orientation of C should be done on site as well, just because we have not been able to visit that site. And I know that when been previously on the site, it's one of those that is not one that we can have not been able to visit easily due to trail alignments and not currently having trails. So.
Great. So shall we have a go at parking options? Let's get there.
Okay.
So before we start talking about parking, we just want to mention the location C, we are not able to take 100 people down there because it's grassland and we are trying to protect the natural resources. So what we can do is take you to the disc line where location B is, and you can see we place flags at the location C.
Mhm.
And the same thing, if you strongly feel like you want to see the trail alignment 16 and 17, those can also be flagged so you can see from higher up at the disc line area.
Great. Rachel.
All right, so then it sounds like we're moving forward to talk a little bit about parking options. Currently we have 7 and 8. And as they said during the presentation, I do want to remind us that we don't have to decide on one recommendation going forward. And in this moment, we don't even have to decide on any. And I want to acknowledge, at least from my personal opinion, I don't think there's any good options for parking involving a preserve this size. And so I've struggled with this throughout. So if there are any thoughts that anybody wants to just share, I'm not sure that we have, if there's a straw poll we want to put out or if there are thoughts that we want to share first.
Because it was brought up by so many of our visitors, can we hear about the feasibility of equestrian parking?
Who's that?
Hi, it's Tina. I haven't spoken to you all evening. The question parking is feasible. If we can make sure the trailers can turn around inside the parking lot area, at least towards the end, because once they get in, they have to get out. They do take up 50 feet in length, so you would be replacing 10 cars with 2 equestrian spaces. That's how much space they need. We have done dual parking space before at Parisma Creek, where you have first come, first serve equestrian or standard cars will park there. I believe equestrians don't go to Parisma Creek because standard cars fill in those spaces pretty quickly, so they can't park there. So they would probably need to be dedicated equestrian spaces. So we could look at that, but you would lose a fair number of parking spots to do that. And we'd have to check to make sure they can turn around. And one other thing is they do like usually pull-throughs. So that's one thing that we'd have to bear in mind. We do have parallel parking spaces at El Corte de Madera. They're not favorable. They're not favored, but absent any other option, they've been useful to our equestrians there.
Does anyone have other thoughts they want to share about the parking options? That's 7 or 8.
One thing I'm struggling with is, I believe the traffic engineer, Andrew, is it? He described some of the recommendations he would have if we were to proceed with option 8 for the cycling lanes. And it sounded like an awful lot, and it would really be more the town's responsibility. So I'm struggling with what to think about that, having not really seen what all those options would look like. We had, how it would play out. It seems like there would be an awful lot of green paving and sharrows and signs, and we don't really know quite what the extent would be or what it would look like.
If you drive down Alpine Road now near Westridge in Ladera, that's what it would look like for having as much green markings and signs as what I think would be necessary to improve the multimodal access near Hawthorns. So it's right down the street if you can make it out there.
You mean at 280? That's the only place we see.
Right. On Alpine Road.
On Alpine Road at 280.
Not quite 280, near Westridge, like a little bit farther to the.
Are you talking about in front of Ladera Shopping Center?
Yeah, near Ladera. It's fairly new.
Yeah, that's farther down, yeah.
I'm sorry if I have those streets incorrectly.
Yeah.
In Ladera, on Alpine Road, there are recent new markings with green dashing and bike lane striping.
There's an awful lot more space in Ladera and on those, and that,
wider.
and the road is far wider.
Actual bike lane space, in other words.
Well, yeah, those are actually designated bike lanes, and the shoulder on Alpine Road in Portola Valley is not a designated bike lane. They're
Not wide enough.
I'll defer to the town on that one.
Yeah, I don't think it's wide enough.
Yeah, thank you. So what I was trying to say is I'm struggling in understanding exactly what all that would add up to in my thinking about option 8.
At risk of stepping on your toes a little bit, Rachel, I wonder if, I think the idea of sending more than one option to the PNR is very, very viable, encouraged. Do we want to just do a quick vote to see if these 2 options are something that people are interested in sending forward?
I guess my concern, like I said a minute ago, there are no good options in parking. What I struggle with is that I can't personally in good conscience advocate for option 8 with safety in mind. And I can't really in good conscience look at something that destroys the meadow. It's the smallest, it's such a small place. And also, even if you're taking out the destruction of the meadow to put vehicles there, you're now hiking around a parking lot or using it for that purpose. And so I appreciate all the options that we have seen for parking, but I have not seen anything that I personally can stand behind as something that is safe and in line with what's been in line with the Mid-Penn mission and vision and what we're looking for with the people. And so I personally don't know how to proceed to give a recommendation where on the one hand, we're talking about safety and on the other hand, we're talking about ecological options. And so if you're looking at, for me personally, 7 does a lot to address the safety, but then 8 is looking at better addressing the ecological. And so I can see presenting both of these to the PNR, but if I were the board that were required to make a decision between either of them, I would not be thrilled to be receiving these at the end of the day. And I don't know that there's a better option out there based on just the size of this, the size of Hawthorns and what's out there. And so I'm struggling with how to proceed with this. And I suspect I may not be the only one who's coming at it. And so I appreciate these are definitely the best options that we have seen, but I don't know how to get behind and support it personally. And so I'm sorry if this is causing difficulties in next steps, but yeah.
Can I speak from a Portola Valley resident perspective? And we've gotten a ton of feedback from the residents, and safety is extremely important, but we also feel in the back of our mind that we have not been able to look at the historic entrance in Los Trancos as and exploring that more. And there, when I look at that, I can see you might be able to make a left turn lane. You might be able to do the right in that way and the right out the other way. And that to me is not that I think that that's a perfect answer, but maybe some, maybe if Mid-Penn would allow it, would begin the historic area and allow us to look at that, or wait till that's going to be addressed, because we've been waiting 10 years for that to be addressed also. And again, what's another 6 months if you've been waiting 10 years? So, and I know there's no good answer there for the line of sight, but there might be, because there might be a roundabout, there might be a way just to make that just a right turn entrance, and then you come out through the existing entrance. I'm not dictating an answer here, but in my mind, I don't feel that that's completely explored yet.
I'm sorry, could I speak to the issue on Los Trancos? That road is very curvy, and the way that it is designed with those curves, especially going northbound, it does not offer the adequate sight distance for somebody traversing that road to stop in time in case there is somebody waiting to turn left into the Hawthorns site.
Is it possible to make it, you can only turn in as a right turn? That's what I'm thinking. It's sort of out of the box, some sort of, I know a conventional opening won't work, but can we have it so you just turn right, coming in off of Alpine? You drive through the preserve to come back out. You made me go.
I think that invites further discussion with the rest of Mid-Penn and whether they find any appetite in routing cars one way through even more potentially environmentally sensitive habitat. I think that you have a worthwhile suggestion in terms of could you route traffic to only make a southbound right turn? It is physically possible to design something like that, but it would be a very restrictive design reliant on people acting lawfully almost all of the time, and that introduces risk.
Is it possible to call for a vote despite the chairman's position?
I think it is, yes.
Yes. If our goal is a straw poll,
Let's try that. And are we talking about whether the PORG would like to recommend with various comments and narrative to send both of these schemes to the PNR?
So I would say we'll do them one by one. And what I would like to acknowledge is that the caveat with them going would be with our concerns included.
Absolutely.
So you're not voting to recommend necessarily. It would be here are the best of the options we've seen, and here's our concerns for each one if it goes. So with that said, 7, your current stance on where 7 is with knowing that concerns and caveats would go forward.
One, 5, 6, 4, 2, 3, and 1, 1. Thank you.
And the same approach on 8, putting 8 forward, again, concerns and caveats known to the PNR.
3 6s. 5 4s.
1, 3, and 2, 2. So for option 7, we're missing 1 vote. Looks like.
We had one person that had to step away. So it's 1 abstention.
And do you want to do both?
Presenting both forward to the PNR. Okay. So, and then in that same vein, presenting 7 and 8 to the PNR, again, still with all concerns and caveats attached.
Ooh.
Hmm.
1 2 1.
5, 4, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. Thank you.
Gretchen?
Rachel?
Oh, yes.
Down the road.
I think that says that we should share final thoughts, start to move forward.
No, I realize the management committee kind of passed on this idea of demolishing the Ranger House and building parking there, but I'd like to hear a straw vote on that. I think that should be a vote done by the board. So that's what I'd like to do.
I'll support that because I just think that there might be something else out there. And I don't know what the answer is, but
Doesn't hurt to get the information, right? So the request was straw vote in terms of the house site continued. Removal, was that really the way you wanted it? Or something happening on the location of the house site for parking?
I think the house needs to go if we need space for for, you know, well, certainly for 30. I don't think 50 will fit. So
this would be on removal of the house.
removal of the house and establishing parking at the central location within the Hawthorns area.
All right, so removal of the house, where do you stand on it?
Four 6s.
2, 5, 1, 4, 1, 3, and 3, 2.
Thank you.
All right.
So are we sure we've thought about every possible option?
So, I mean, there is this other one that David mentioned, which is a really big legal mess, but might be the safest and most environmentally friendly thing to do, which would be to go back and look at, renegotiate that easement if possible. And given the rock and the hard place that we're caught between, I know it's a conservation easement, but that might be something that the deciders would support.
Well, the other thing is looks like the conservation easement goes about halfway between the current access and the Portola intersection. And so maybe we could fit a smaller parking lot. I don't know if it's like a no parking lot option. We haven't studied it,
Yeah.
but it's,
The
yeah,
terrain,
we haven't
the
studied
terrain
it.
is very steep there. The hill comes almost to down.
Yeah, I agree. But we haven't asked them to study it.
Obviously, it would need more study, and I don't know if Paul wants to speak to it, but it would probably be along the general lines of option 8 transposed.
With less shade and less steep
Did you address the easement?
road.
Please.
I would like to address the conservation easement. We have had recent talks with Post. There is no movement on reopening the conservation easement. They've confirmed that it was an easement donated to them, so they feel very strongly that they need to uphold it and enforce its parameters. So we have asked and spoken with them about the conservation easement.
I think in light of that, I think we need to table it.
I think we've largely touched on the issues that we can touch on, and it is getting late.
It is. So
One more that Shelley raised. The idea that there might be a need for a couple of parking spaces and some kind of access to the views for people with limitations in being able to get around. And the idea of putting some parking spaces up near the ranger house for people with mobility limitations, I think is an interesting one that might be worth exploring further.
Yeah, so
Leave
just
above there.
sort of considering the consideration of accessible trails to get up to the viewpoint. There are very specific parameters, even with, I think, parking at the residence, to be able to climb the hill at the appropriate grade, even kind of adhering to not quite the ADA standard, but the ABA, which is the Architectural Barriers Act, that gives you some more flexibility for outdoor areas, can still be pretty challenging and result in significant construction-related impacts to the landscape. Yeah, very kind of drawn-out trails, that basically switch back and forth and have to be wide enough and would then have to be retained. So you could look at something that would end up being very engineered to be able to get to the top where those vista points are. Could be very challenging. Not to say it's infeasible, but there are some significant challenges there.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Sure.
I think we should feel very happy with what we've done this evening, and I think it might be time to move on. Yeah, please.
So before we close, we want to ask you, next meeting will be a site meeting on March 24th. And with all the great discussions we're having, do you want to continue the discussions on site in March? Because we can bring, all the voting sheets and have you continue the discussions, in addition to hearing the public's feedback, of course.
I think there's some great impetus there, but it is a challenging thing to do on site.
I think the only one that would merit strong consideration on site would be the bench placements.
Which is something I think we can bring back here and decide in fairly quick order the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
Make your decision up there.
Yeah.
I think the site visit, so the site visit is not a site tour. It's a site visit to look at key spots, and the locations that we're going to go to are going to be decided actually with Mid-Penn staff and the co-chairs. So, you know, obviously understanding your side of the table, and with a view to being able to really clarify these issues that we're struggling with a little bit.
And can we also ask for the site visit, might be a continued conversation as one of the chairs, but to maybe deliberately take certain pictures of like directions of benches while we're there so that we can bring them back and add them to the packet as well. So that when we say, this is the direction we're talking about facing. And so while we're there, maybe say, can we get a picture facing this direction as a possibility? And so making sure that there's a camera as part of the equipment that gets brought.
We can bring a drone.
I don't think so.
No. And also maybe looking at realignment of 17, just to make sure that that gets included in the,
And the site
Sure.
visit. So I think we are in fact ready to move on. And the meeting schedule, Ashley just mentioned it, March 24th, 9 till we're done, till 1. And then we'll bring it back here in June to wrap it up, I think. I mean, I do think we're actually close enough to be able to do that. So, Ashley, do you want to touch on anything here?
No, we can just.
Okay, after you. You want to do it?
No, we have.
Leave it there.
Actually, just one clarification on the timing. It's on Saturdays through 1 p.m., not 1 a.m.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good touch. I would actually say,
What did you say?
thanks, Judith. It's actually not the Saturday, though. It's the Sunday. It was the only date that we could find that worked for everyone. So Sunday morning, but 9 till 1, not, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, so we do have some homework for you. You know, obviously it's familiarize yourself with all the materials that we've got here, and really prepare yourself when you're on site to gather the information you need to bring it back here so that we can, I mean, I think it's a very well-informed group, but the site visit will clarify things still further. And, you know, consider the conceptual design alternatives that we want to meet. And if we've got qualifications or concerns, be able to articulate those so that we can convey those to the PNR. And I think with that, we are done. And I encourage you to take your badge off and drop it in on the table on the way out. Thank you very much. And Rachel, would you like to close the meeting?
It is 9:53 and the meeting is adjourned. It is my bedtime.
Thank you.